Chapter 1089. It was rare for Yi Tianyun to be so open. From the exchange of words with Elder Xiao Tian, he knew that this group of people was sincere. As long as they were determined, they would not change their minds. However, it was obvious that the two elders of the same deity palace had completely different ideas. One was biased towards recruiting geniuses, while the other focused on character. He originally thought that the deity palace would be a pure land, but it seemed like only Elder Dong Yun had such an idea. Elder Dong Yun had a different idea, and he was not as extreme as Elder Xiao Tian. There were more people like Elder Xiao Tian, and it was survival of the fittest. They had to choose the cream of the crop, not just the cream of the crop. Every single one of Elder Eastcloud's disciples was outstanding, but they were still far from the level of super geniuses and elites. As for Elder Xiao Tian, he only recruited those with great potential and were considered elites. Elder Xiao Tian looked at them and smiled contemptuously. What a joke! In the entire deity palace, you have the fewest people. In the deity palace's trials, your rankings are quite low. This is because of Elder Dong Yun's good leadership, or else you wouldn't have gotten such good result. Elder Dong Yun's face turned green and white, and he did not look good. It was undeniable that Elder Xiao Tian was speaking the truth. Because he was too stubborn about character and unity, there were very few cultivators who passed. Some had amazing talent, but their character was not up to standard, so they were immediately eliminated. Those who were eliminated naturally joined other elders, which meant that their resources were continuously flowing in. On the other hand, Elder Dong Yun had not had a single newcomer join for several years, or even hundreds of years. It was not that no one came to take the trial, but that no one passed every time. The contents of the trial were too insane for them. Most people who had cultivated to this level were more selfish in their hearts. Suddenly becoming tolerant and associating with the weak was something they couldn't do. As time went by, the result was that no one joined in. When Yi Tianyun came, no one lined up, and that was the case. The transportation portal that he headed for led to the area managed by Elder Dong Yun, so naturally, he met Elder Dong Yun. As for the other paths, they would have to face different elders. In the long run, Elder Eastcloud's reputation grew more and more ferocious. In the end, no one came to sign up. This was the most awkward part. Elder Dong Yun's actions were clearly correct, but most cultivators did not want to be associated with weaklings. Or perhaps he didn't like this feeling of restraint. Everyone had their own thoughts. Yi Tianyun liked this feeling. At least he wouldn't be stabbed. This is my matter. There is no need for Elder Xiao Tian to worry so much, Elder Dong Yun said in a deep voice. Of course, that's your business. However, if the other shrines were to compete, it wouldn't just be your business, but the entire shrine of God's business. When the time comes, I wonder what the palace master will think if your people drag us down. Elder Xiao Tian sneered. Every divine palace had a palace master, who was mainly the existence of the entire divine palace. Usually, they wouldn't appear, and would be managed by many elders. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't come out. I know what I'm doing. With that, Elder Dong Yun admitted that he was in the wrong and led the disciples to the private room in front. When they sat down, Senior Brother Hydreigon was extremely displeased. Elder Dong Yun, that Elder Xiao Tian is too much. I'm not afraid of them at all. Even if it's a competition of geniuses, we have many here. Just Huolian and I alone are enough to suppress that bunch of idiots. All of them didn't even have the mood to drink anymore. They felt extremely sullen. No one liked to be slapped in the face, especially in front of their own elders. It was even more displeasing. So far, what he said is indeed the truth. If you want to retaliate against him, the best way is during the competition in the palace. All of you must fight hard for me, Elder Dong Yun said through gritted teeth. He wanted to make a move, but fighting between elders was also not allowed. Private fights were not allowed. Especially two Sir God cultivation powerhouses. If they were to fight, drunken Fanxing would explode. I will definitely fight hard and beat them to death. What I hate the most are those high and mighty fellows who look down on everyone. I admit that my talent is lacking, but don't I work hard? I believe that sooner or later, I'll be able to catch up to that bunch of fellows. That's right, talent can't compare. But can they look down on us like this? If they have the capabilities, then don't cultivate. A bunch of arrogant and conceited fellows. Each and every one of them started drinking furiously. The wine that they drank did not have any taste at all, like cows chewing on peonies. Each and every one of them was filled with righteous indignation. Yi Tianyun lightly drank the fine wine that was served, narrowing his eyes slightly, thinking about something. At this time, a wave of jubilant cheers came from downstairs and started to liven up, drawing their attention. As they looked down, a fighting arena was set up at no idea when. The Apricot Rain Inn was very spacious. Setting up a fighting arena was not a big problem. Welcome, everyone. Today is the same as in the past. There's a special program. As long as you all send people over to fight, if they win, drinks are all waived. Of course, those who aren't coming down to fight can just place a bet like in the past. The Apricot Rain Inn's manager stood on the fighting arena and explained the situation here to the numerous guests. The Apricot Rain Inn was a little special. In this world where martial arts reigned supreme, the word fighting was naturally indispensable. The Apricot Rain Inn set up the fighting arena here as well as special activities. If they won, they would receive a reward of waiving drinks. If they didn't like it, they could place a bet. It could be considered a small prize. This kind of livening program was pleasing to the eyes. Actually, it was basically just placing a bet. The banker was naturally the Apricot Rain Inn. It was undoubtedly more profitable to earn extra money from this place. This is our agent. Who's interested in challenging him? The manager pointed to the agent he sent up. His cultivation was rather strong, having reached the 6th level of the Lord of Heaven. Those who come up to challenge cannot have a cultivation that is too high. The highest cannot be higher than the 1st level. Otherwise, I'll lose my life. As for those with low cultivation, there's no need to worry. With their gazes shifted, the crowd's mood eased a little. They all looked down at the situation below the stage. Very soon, there would be a customer challenging them. This was a place where drinks were waived. How could they not give it a try? The drinks here were rather expensive. If they could drink for free, why not? Chapter 1090. Before the battle began, everyone began to place their bets. Everyone's bets were different, but they all had their bets. Some bet on the guest, some on the fighter. It all depended on their preferences. Let's place our bets. Who do you choose? I choose the guest. Choose the guest. I feel that the agent is slightly stronger, so it's possible that he will win. I feel that the guest is stronger. He's even stronger than the fighter. Senior brother Hydreigon and the others were discussing who to bet on. They had some free time on their hands, and they were drinking now. How could they not liven things up? Not only them, even Elder Dong Yun began to place his bets. He wanted to earn as much as he could since he had nothing to do here. Soon, they all placed their bets. The waiter collected the bets and settled them when they left. Junior brother, which one do you favor? Senior sister Fire Lotus asked. I favor the fighter. His cultivation is lower than the guest's, but his foundation is stable. Especially his strength. He's definitely an existence that can crush his opponent. He doesn't need too much technique. He can defeat his opponent with just his strength. Yi Tianyun analyzed simply. There was actually more detailed information, but he didn't say it out loud. If he said it out loud, it would definitely scare senior sister Fire Lotus. He could even see the opponent's martial arts, overall strength, and weaknesses. Wouldn't that be scary? With the appraisal eye, there was nothing he couldn't see through. Does that doja look very powerful? I feel that his aura is a bit weak. He doesn't seem to have enough explosive power. Someone interrupted. This is hiding his strength. If it's so easy to see through, why would the shopkeeper send someone up? He's not doing charity. He's here to win money and create a situation where he'll lose. Yi Tianyun smiled faintly. His further analysis made everyone feel that it made sense. However, some still felt that the guest would win. Let me think about it. I'll still bet on the fighter. Me too. Let's listen to little junior brother. It sounds quite reasonable. I'm firm on my choice. I feel that the guest will win. I've seen the guest win before. Sometimes, I still make a mistake. Some people chose to believe in Yi Tianyun, while others chose not to. Actually, it was not a big deal. They all believed in their own judgment and felt that their guess would not be wrong. Then, I will bet 1,000 starstones on Doja. Yi Tianyun spent a lot of money. He didn't spend too much, but he was just playing around. There was no need to spend so much. Soon, everyone finished placing their bets. Then, they began to fight crazily. In the beginning, the warrior was suppressed for a short while. Then, the warrior suddenly exploded and waved his arms wildly, ruthlessly throwing his opponent away and winning the match. That agent really won. That's really godly. That power is really hidden and exploding at the critical moment, catching the opponent off guard and throwing him out. Those who had placed their bets with Yi Tianyun were all smiling, while those who had lost had bitter expressions on their faces. If there was no profit to be made, he would definitely have a bitter expression. Little junior brother, you've really guessed correctly. Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled and clapped her hands happily. She had listened to Yi Tianyun and placed her bet on the warrior. Yi Tianyun smiled knowingly. Unless the opponent admitted defeat on purpose, he would definitely not make a wrong judgment. Soon, it was the turn of the next batch. The warrior went down to rest. This time, senior sister Fire Lotus continued to ask, little junior brother, what about this round? Who do you think will win? Is it the warrior? I think the warrior is quite powerful. His cultivation is higher than his opponent's, and his equipment is also better. Everyone looked at Yi Tianyun, waiting to see what he would say this time. Judging from his eyes, it was definitely the warrior who was powerful. As for the guest, he was just average. This time, the guest can win unless he admits defeat on purpose. Yi Tianyun smiled. His cultivation is lower than the warrior's, but his foundation is there. I can still feel the aura of flames from him. It is very likely that he has the power of demonic fire. When used together, there will be unexpected effects. Amazing. Little junior brother, you can see that the opponent has demonic fire. Senior sister Fire Lotus covered her mouth in surprise. This is just a feeling. Whether it is accurate or not, that is another matter. Yi Tianyun smiled. Okay, I will trust you this round. I will bet 5,000 starstones. Senior sister Fire Lotus bravely bet 5,000 starstones. This was not a lot, but it was definitely not a small amount. If they lost, it would be quite painful. Senior sister Fire Lotus, you are really bold. You trust little junior brother so much? They all felt that it was very strange. It is okay. It sounds reasonable. Do you want to bet with me? Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled. Let's try. I will listen to little junior brother. I will pass. It seems that the warrior is a bit stronger. I will choose the warrior. Some of them continued to choose with Yi Tianyun, while others chose the warrior. Their choices were still different. Soon, the match started again. Yi Tianyun's judgment was not wrong at all. The guest used demonic fire and martial arts to easily defeat the opponent. There was no difficulty at all. It was a complete victory. God, it is true. Little junior brother, you are really amazing. Your foresight is really better than ours. I won less. If only I bet more. They were both happy and worried. They did not expect that Yi Tianyun's judgment would be correct twice in a row. It was really shocking. If it was a blind guess, there would be a 50-50 chance. However, Yi Tianyun's analysis was very accurate. He knew what trump card the opponent could use. That was another matter. Little junior brother, I've earned again. It's all thanks to you that I can earn so much. Senior sister Hualian smiled until her eyes turned into slits. This is all your choice. It has nothing to do with me. I was just saying casually. Don't blame me if you lose. Yi Tianyun smiled. Then, it was the third match. All of them looked at Yi Tianyun, hoping that he could give an accurate answer. 2 consecutive wins. How could they not look forward to it? From what I see, the guest has a higher chance. Buy the guess. Buy. If you don't buy, you are not a disciple of the Temple of Gods. That's right. I will buy the guest. I will bet 5,000 star stones. Before Yi Tianyun finished speaking, the people behind him had already placed their bets in a frenzy. Other than a few who did not buy, most of them chose to buy. Chapter 1091. Up until now, no one had ever heard of the shopkeeper deliberately arranging for them to lose, so no one was worried about this. If they were discovered, the apricot rain house would be scolded to death. That wasn't a problem. The most important thing was whether he could make an accurate judgment. Only by pointing out the good points could he have a higher chance of winning. If Yi Tianyun could point out the opponent's good points, they believed him even more. That prompted them to place their bets. They believed in his choice and treated him as a godly diviner. Soon, the third round was decided. Yi Tianyun's choice won. The result shocked them again. They didn't believe it before, but now they did. If the first and second times were coincidences, what about the third time? The third time was no longer a coincidence. The key was that he had pointed out the opponent's good points. It couldn't be a coincidence. That's great. We won again. If I had known, I would have placed a bigger bet. I would have earned more. Yeah, but it's okay. We can continue to bet. As long as Little Junior says it, we will place a bigger bet. It's a pity that the upper limit is 10,000 star stones. Otherwise, I would have bet more. They didn't just have a few star stones. Some had hundreds of thousands of star stones. But the upper limit was 10,000. If it was too high, the apricot rain house wouldn't be able to afford it. Although they were confident in the people they sent, it didn't mean they were absolutely confident. They were in the heavenly spring divine territory. There were so many geniuses. If a heaven-defying genius appeared and someone else bet tens of millions of starstones, the apricot rain house would lose everything. The upper limit of 10,000 starstones was a good number. It wasn't high or low. To put it bluntly, it was just a simple entertainment. They couldn't lose too much. Of course, if too many people placed bets on the agent, the manager would make the agent lose. Otherwise, he would lose a lot of money. They just had to pretend. This time, the two are evenly matched. Their abilities are about the same. I can't estimate it. Yi Tianyun spread his hands helplessly. Their abilities were about the same. If they fought, they could only rely on their experience to win. Yi Tianyun could tell. Their abilities were about the same. The appraisal I couldn't tell. Evenly matched, all of them looked disappointed, which made things even more awkward. If they were evenly matched, even an elder wouldn't be able to tell. One could see his experience and various other aspects of ability, but who could see his combat experience? Soon after, they could only place a bet and treat it as a casual bet. Soon, the result was out again. It was Doja's victory. The two of them were indeed evenly matched, and Doja had almost lost. It just so happened to verify Yi Tianyun's words. The two of them were evenly matched. It was hard to say. What about this round? Who will win? They looked at Yi Tianyun expectantly, wanting to hear what Yi Tianyun had to say. I think the agent will win. The guest's cultivation is still one level higher, but this agent is stronger. It looked very ordinary, but it was a speed martial art. Under the rule of speed, he will be able to win this round. Yi Tianyun quickly deduced. Well said. Speed is the only thing that can't be defeated. Then I'll bet on him. 10,000 star stones. Me too. I'll bet 10,000 star stones. They all fought to place their bets, which really scared Yi Tianyun. You guys are making things very difficult for me. If I lose, won't I have to take the blame? Yi Tianyun felt very helpless. After all, this wasn't a small amount. It's okay. If we really lose, we won't blame you. Anyway, you let us earn quite a lot before. At most, we'll just lose it back. That's right. We chose it ourselves. Who can say for sure? They all smiled. Even if they really lost, it could only be said that it was a little more unexpected. I said that the guest will win. At this moment, Elder Xiao Tian walked out, his gaze sharp. I didn't expect Elder Dong Yun to have such a blind disciple. This round is clearly the guest's win. You don't even know who this guest is. He is a great genius of the spear palace. His spear art is like a shadow. Who can dodge his ultimate spear art? What kind of speed can dodge his spear art? His 3 disciples also walked out. The wooden tokens in their hands represented that the person they bet on was the guest. A genius of the spear palace? I remember now. He is the Shadow Lord of Heaven of the spear palace. His spear art is indeed impressive. One of them suddenly remembered the identity of this person, causing everyone's expression to change. From this, it could be seen that this person was quite famous. On the other hand, that doja wasn't so famous. It could even be said that he was unknown. Who cares who he is? I believe in little junior brother's judgment. That doja will win. That's right. Doja will win. What spear palace genius? Can't the person invited by the shopkeeper be a genius? That's right. Doja will definitely win. What blind eyes? I think you are the real blind one. None of them changed their expressions. Instead, they all supported Yi Tianyun's judgment. When facing an enemy, they had to stand on the same side. Elder Xiao Tian, how we choose is our business, right? Elder Dong Yun said indifferently. Of course it's your business. It's just that you have placed all your hopes in the hands of a human. It's really funny, and you have even thrown 10,000 star stones at each of them, Elder Xiao Tian said indifferently. Just watch. That Shadow Lord of Heaven is the true winner. Elder Xiao Tian had such confidence because he naturally knew the background of this Shadow Lord of Heaven. Otherwise, how could he have such confidence? Yi Tianyun didn't say anything. He couldn't be bothered to refute. He had observed this Shadow Lord of Heaven before. His abilities were indeed not bad. However, from a comprehensive point of view, he was naturally inferior to that doja. Very soon, the battle began. The Shadow Lord of Heaven's spear was indeed like a dragon. Every spear strike was accompanied by a shadow. It was as if the shadow was entangled. However, the doja was even more domineering. The long sword in his hand flickered with a bright light. Most people couldn't see it, and it had already slashed the Shadow Lord of Heaven. Following that, he displayed an even more magnificent sword technique. It was so dazzling that they couldn't see it clearly. This speed was really too fast. They had never seen a sword technique of this level reach a level that even they couldn't see. In the blink of an eye, it was unknown how many tens of thousands of swords had been stabbed out. The Shadow Lord of Heaven was forced back again and again. Finally, under the piercing of a sword, the Shadow Lord of Heaven was sent flying. Complete defeat, a complete and utter defeat. They didn't expect that the great genius of the Spear Palace would be so easily defeated. He was beaten to the point that he couldn't even fight back. It was really as Yi Tianyun had said. Only speed could not be defeated. It was an existence that could crush others. Chapter 1092. Elder Xiao Tian's face was not swollen, but the crowd felt that his face was really swollen. Just a moment ago, he was so sure that the agent would lose. With the genius of the Spear Palace, the opponent would definitely lose. Now, he was slapped in the face very hard. He did not know who was blind, but he was the one who was blind. He could not see it. Yi Tianyun had exposed the real situation. Elder Xiao Tian was so embarrassed that he wanted to die. That's great. That agent really won. That sword technique was too fast. I could barely see it. Is there such a person in our heavenly spring divine realm? That's right. It's the first time I've seen such a fast attack. He looks very unfamiliar. If he had such amazing sword techniques, he would be very famous. No matter what, we won. 10,000 star stones. Now it's doubled to 20,000 star stones. We really earned big. All of them cheered. But most of them wanted to see Elder Xiao Tian make a fool of himself. Elder Dong Yun naturally would not let go of this chance. He smiled at Elder Xiao Tian. TSK, Elder Xiao Tian, your eyes are really good. What Spear Palace will win? Now! A dozen of us earned more than 100,000 star stones in one go. Although it's not a lot, it's entertainment. It's good to win. Elder Xiao Tian glared at them, and even more at Yi Tianyun. He did not expect to make a fool of himself. He did not know how to retort. Who asked him to be so full of himself? He could not change the situation no matter what. Hey, isn't that the new super genius of Sword Palace, Sword Rain Lord of Heaven? I didn't expect the shopkeeper to come and be a fighter, a new member. No wonder I have never seen him before. So he's the new genius of Sword Palace. Rumor has it that he's the #1 sword genius of Sword Palace in 1,000 years. The audience below immediately began to discuss, and only then did the people above know the origins of the agents. The #1 sword genius of Sword Palace in 1,000 years. Compared to Shadow Lord of Heaven, he was naturally much stronger. The Shadow-like Lord of Heaven was at most ranked above average in the Spear Palace, but the Sword Rain Lord of Heaven was the #1 swordsmanship genius in 1,000 years. The abilities he displayed far surpassed the Shadow-like Lord of Heaven. When Elder Xiao Tian heard this, his face turned green and white. This was because he was not well informed enough. If he had known, he definitely wouldn't have said such a thing. In the end, he was blind. Little junior brother, you're really too amazing. You even saw through this. You're really our lucky star. You've just joined, and you've already made us a fortune. Yes. We all suspect that you're from the Heavenly Trigram sect. Only the Heavenly Trigram sect can deduce that. Heavenly Trigram Gate? It can't be, right? If he was from the Heavenly Trigram sect, would he join the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm? They all looked at Yi Tianyun, waiting for Yi Tianyun's answer. Heavenly Trigram Gate? I'm not from the Heavenly Trigram sect. I was just casually guessing. It's just luck. Yi Tianyun was humble. The Heavenly Trigram sect they were talking about was actually a hidden faction. It wasn't considered a God Realm faction. It was just an extremely secretive sect. It was said that even third-grade factions didn't dare to provoke them. He guessed 4 rounds correctly. No one would believe it if he said it was luck. They all laughed. They felt that this new junior brother was more and more pleasing to the eye. A human, and the Heavenly Trigram sect will accept him? That's just daydreaming. Elder Xiao Tian said coldly, since you're so accurate, Elder East Cloud, why don't we go down and have a spar? Let's see if we're right. He was really angry and wanted to get back some face from Elder East Cloud. Let's have a spar. Do you think we're afraid of you? Senior brother High Dragon and the rest had wanted to do this long ago. They kept saying that they only accepted trash. Then, let's have a spar to see who was the real trash. Elder East Cloud did not even open his mouth, and they were already fighting to have a spar. Yi Tianyun looked over. The 3 people that Elder Xiao Tian brought over also had a feeling of eagerness to give it a try. The cultivation of the 3 of them were not low. They were all at the 5th level of the Lord of Heaven or above. They were considered to be relatively strong. The disciples that Elder Xiao Tian invited over to drink would definitely not be simple. If they were too ordinary, it would really be a slap in the face. Elder Xiao Tian, since you want to have a spar, that's no problem. How do you want to spar? Elder East Cloud naturally would not admit defeat. He felt that there was no lack of geniuses on his side. They would not be the slightest bit inferior to the other side. Of course it's to go down and have a spar. We'll send out 1 person, and you guys will be sent out by that kid. Don't you guys believe in his judgment? Then let him choose. How about it? Elder Xiao Tian looked at Yi Tianyun. He wanted to get back some face in disguise. However, going against a junior was really not the bearing of an elder. Elder Xiao Tian really did not have any bearing to speak of. No matter who the opponent was, getting back some face was the most important thing. Everyone looked at each other. They did not think that there would be such a move. Elder East Cloud did not think too much and said, no problem. Let him choose. I have no objections. Since he is my disciple, I should believe in my disciple's choice. Senior brother High Dragon and the others also nodded. They smiled at Yi Tianyun and said, little junior brother's judgment is so accurate. I'll let you choose. Yi Tianyun smiled slightly. Elder Xiao Tian really knew how to make things difficult for others. He was really small-minded. No problem. Since senior brothers believe in me, then I'll choose. Yi Tianyun looked at Elder Xiao Tian and said, how does this work? 1 round to determine the winner? Of course it's not one round to determine the winner. It'll be best of 3 rounds. How about it? Elder Xiao Tian smiled and said, otherwise, in order to avoid being bullied by us, I'll give you guys more chances. Of course, I believe that you guys will only send Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven or Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven. Who else can you send? Elder Xiao Tian laughed out loud. At a glance, only Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven and Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven could see. The others could only stay at the side as spectators. Oh, I don't think so. Don't worry. I don't need to send Senior Brother Hydreigon or Fiery Lotus to deal with your disciple. If I send one of them, it'll be my loss. Yi Tianyun pointed at his own eyes and said, I should say that my eyesight is not good and I made a mistake. How about that? Yi Tianyun's words greatly shocked them. Although they were very unhappy with Elder Xiao Tian's words, the strongest among them were Imperial Dragon and Fiery Lotus. If they did not send the two, how could they win? Ha ha ha, what a joke. You said it yourself, Elder East Cloud. Didn't you just say that he'll be in charge of the selection? Elder Xiao Tian laughed so hard that he was about to cry. How could the disciple he had brought be ordinary? In his opinion, if it wasn't Imperial Dragon and Fiery Lotus, it would be impossible to deal with them. Yes, he'll be the one to choose. Elder Dongyun was not the least bit displeased with Yi Tianyun's words. After so many rounds, he believed that Yi Tianyun was absolutely confident. Since he said it, there would be no problem. Chapter 1093. Elder Dongyun's confidence made Yi Tianyun feel good. What he wanted was this sense of trust. If there was no trust at all, then there was no need to talk about mutual trust. Thank you for your trust, Elder Dongyun, Yi Tianyun said gratefully. I said I trust you, and that means I trust you. I'm not the kind of person who goes back on his word, especially someone with a big mouth and arrogance. Elder Dongyun's words had a hidden meaning, and it was obviously targeted at Elder Xiao Tian. Elder Xiao Tian was exasperated, and he said with a livid face, then I'll send out the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Who will you send? Just like what you said, we can't send out the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven or the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven. He wanted to see the other party make a fool of himself. Not sending out the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven was simply courting death. To him, this was no different from giving away their lives. All this while, only the two of them had some ability, and the rest were nothing special. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, Yi Tianyun looked at him and smiled. Then we'll send out Senior Brother Phoenix Feather. Senior Brother Phoenix Feather is up for this round. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven walked out with a serious expression, but in reality, he didn't have much confidence. He just didn't want to be at a disadvantage in front of Elder Xiao Tian again, and he couldn't make a fool of himself. Everyone else was shocked. They didn't expect Yi Tianyun to send out the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven's standard wasn't very high, and he could only be considered average. As for the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, his standard wasn't low, and he could even be said to be on the same level as the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven. Elder Xiao Tian wouldn't bring out a weak disciple, and he could even be said to be very strong. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's eyes were filled with disdain. The opponent was a level weaker than him, so the result was even less suspense. Alright, can we go down now? Elder Xiao Tian couldn't wait to see the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven cripple the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. Wait, I have something to discuss with Senior Brother Phoenix Feather. You guys can send someone down first. Yi Tianyun indicated. Alright. Elder Xiao Tian gestured for Heavenly Monarch Gold Jade to go down first. As he did, Elder Xiao Tian sent a voice transmission. Be more ruthless and cripple him. There's no need to Tian, but cripple of Tian is. Elder Xiao Tian, this disciple has the same intention. Heavenly Monarch Golden Jade smiled coldly. He already had this thought for a long time. Since it was a fight, it definitely wouldn't end so easily. If there weren't any problems, it wouldn't be interesting at all. Yi Tianyun and the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven communicated something. After a while, the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven's face was filled with doubt, and he seemed to find Yi Tianyun's words strange. I understand. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven nodded. Senior brother Phoenix Feather, I'll leave it to you. Yi Tianyun smiled. No problem. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven was full of confidence, and he walked down the stairs. At this moment, the people below were already prepared. When the manager saw that there were people who wanted to fight, he welcomed them to go up. The next program will be the fight between the guests. Everyone can also bet. The manager immediately announced to let people bet. Little junior brother, what did you say to Phoenix Feather? They asked curiously. Cough cough. Actually, I didn't say much. You guys will see it later. Yi Tianyun smiled faintly, but he didn't say what it was. After fiercely selling suspense, everyone continued to watch with doubt. It seemed that the difference in strength between the two of them was still quite big. Why did Yi Tianyun dare to let the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven go up? There was someone stronger than the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven here, but he didn't choose, and he just had to choose him. As for what exactly would happen, they would have to see the final result. For their own people, they didn't hesitate to bet on the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. Everyone bet 10,000 starstones, and they didn't hesitate at all. For their own people, they would definitely strongly support them. The starstones felt like they were free, and they continued to bet. After Elder Xiao Tian saw this, he sneered, truly a foolish person with a lot of money. Even if they believe in their own people, they wouldn't be so brainless to believe. They naturally believed that they would definitely win. It should be said that when Yi Tianyun said that he wouldn't send out the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven and the Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven, they believed that they would definitely win. Very soon, the battle started. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven held a golden long sword in his hand, and the golden light was quite dazzling. This was a golden sword that he had personally forged, and it was definitely compatible with his elemental power. It could erupt with the strongest power. Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, if I attack too heavily, then don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame your little junior brother. As soon as he finished speaking, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven had already flown over. The golden sword in his hand shone brightly, and it was as if the Buddha's light had enveloped him, and his whole body flickered with golden light. It looked as if the Buddha's light had shone, and it had enveloped this piece of land, causing all the Avilders to have nowhere to hide. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven similarly took out the flower feather longsword that he had forged, and he flew over, intending to confront the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven head-on. When everyone saw this scene, they shook their heads one after another. This was undoubtedly the most unwise choice, and it was equivalent to dragging himself into the water instead. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's ability had always been stronger than his. If he were to confront it head-on, he would undoubtedly be at a disadvantage. Now that he was confronting it head-on, wasn't he courting death? Haha, is this what you call your eyesight? Elder Xiao Tian laughed out loud, and he felt that Yi Tianyun was very ridiculous. Was it his plan to let the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven confront him head-on? Yi Tianyun could not be bothered with him, and the corners of his lips curled into a smile. Everything was within his control, and there was no need for him to worry about anything. At the same time, when the two of them were about to collide, the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven's attack suddenly turned downward, and it actually ignored his opponent's attack. It directly swung its sword at the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Countless flying feathers pierced through the long sword, and it was like a dense sword rain that pierced through continuously. You think this rubbish sword rain can break through my defense? You're courting death. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven waved its long sword rapidly, and it broke through the sword rain. However, there was too much sword rain, and it was impossible for it to block all of them. Following that, a small portion of the sword rain pierced through, and then fiercely hit the body of the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. There were many parts of the body that were hit, and there was no problem at all. When one part of the sword rain hit the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's expression changed, and the originally fierce attack suddenly disappeared. What replaced it was the disappearance of the star power, and the attack dissipated. The overbearing attack suddenly dissipated, and no one knew what had happened, including the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. He did not know what he had done. However, the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven did not stop, and it wanted to take advantage of his weakness to take his life. It continued to display countless flying feathers, and they continuously pierced through the golden jade Lord of Heaven. At this time, the golden jade Lord of Heaven covered its abdomen, which had been bleeding for some time, and it was obvious that it was a wound caused by the flying feathers. Its face was pale, and it waved its sword with one hand to block, but its momentum was weaker than before, and its star power could not be sustained. Chapter 1094. Despicable. The golden jade Lord of Heaven covered his waist and kept waving his arms to block the feathers, but his strength was getting weaker and weaker. The wound on his abdomen was like a dam that was releasing astral power. He couldn't accumulate any energy to attack. The Phoenix Lord of Heaven kept pushing him back. He couldn't fight back at all. Theoretically, he should be able to stop the bleeding even if he was injured or ignore the wound and could still fight. However, the golden jade Lord of Heaven seemed to have withered. He couldn't fight back at all and could only keep moving back. If this went on, he would lose for sure. Damn it. What's going on? When Elder Xiao Tian saw his disciple being forced back again and again, he roared, "Don't care about that wound, fight him." He didn't want to lose this round. He just wanted to win 2 out of 3 rounds. He needed to win both rounds, not lose one. What he wanted was complete perfection, not a scar. The golden jade Lord of Heaven was pushed back. He wanted to fight back, but he couldn't control himself and kept moving back. Very quickly, he was sent flying by the Phoenix Feather Heaven Monarch's ferocious attacks. After he fell to the ground, he coughed up blood. Especially the abdomen area, which kept bleeding. More importantly, he could feel the astral power flowing out. He had seen blood before, but he had never seen the power of a meteor. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect the Phoenix Lord of Heaven to win just like that. Let alone the others, even the Phoenix Feather Heaven Monarch herself was dumbfounded. Who would have thought that she would succeed so easily? How could he not be shocked when he defeated an opponent who was stronger than him so easily? Damn it! Elder Xiao Tian cursed and quickly flew down to the golden jade Lord of Heaven. He checked and said in shock, "His inner world is damaged. Astral power is flowing out. As a genius, he must have an inner world and it should be quite complete." The inner world was very important. If it was broken, it would be very destructive. That was exactly what happened. His inner world was broken and it was a mess inside. Under such circumstances, not to mention fighting, it would be good if they could hold on and not explode. "You're so ruthless. You actually broke my disciple's inner world." Elder Xiao Tian was like a dog as he began to bark wildly. "Elder Xiao Tian, what is the meaning of this? We all saw the fight just now. I didn't see my disciple being too heavy-handed. It was all normal attacks, and he didn't even try to kill his opponent. There's something wrong with him. He actually dared to slander my disciple." Elder East Cloud also flew down, his expression furious. Not to mention Elder East Cloud, everyone could see this. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven didn't do anything. It was just a very normal attack. It just happened to break through the opponent's defense, and then it became like this. Such irregular attacks just happened to break through. Everything was so coincidental. This was at most an accidental injury. How could it be said that it was intentional? "Is this your doing?" Elder Xiao Tian stared at Yi Tianyun. Everyone was chosen by Yi Tianyun. Other than him, who else could it be? What could I be doing? I was just up there, and then I simply sent out Senior Brother Phoenix Feather. Is there a problem? Yi Tianyun shrugged helplessly. At this time, everyone remembered that the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven was sent down by him. He really succeeded in defeating the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Not only did he defeat, but it could be said to be a complete victory. He directly crushed the opponent. Although it wasn't a perfect victory, at least he won. The process wasn't important. What was important was the result. Elder Xiao Tian gritted his teeth. He was just casually saying it. How could he slander him? Moreover, it was his own problem. He couldn't blame others. Then, Elder Xiao Tian brought people down to treat their injuries. The inner world was damaged, and it needed to be quickly repaired. Otherwise, if the foundation was damaged, there would be repercussions. When the fight temporarily stopped, everyone came to watch. They were all amazed by Yi Tianyun's judgment. He really succeeded in defeating the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. This is too inconceivable. When I first chose the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, I was worried. Now it seems that I was worried for nothing. That's right. Who would have thought it would be so easy? It was so easy. The opponent didn't even touch the surface of the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, what did little junior brother say to you previously? The most important thing had come. Previously, Yi Tianyun had whispered something to him. They were very curious. Now, they could finally get the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven to say it and resolve the doubts in their hearts. Little junior brother didn't say anything to me. He just told me to attack with all my strength and use whatever moves I usually use. However, I need to face him head-on. Don't be afraid. Attack him head-on. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven said helplessly. That simple? Everyone was shocked. That simple. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven spread his hands and said, I wasn't confident at that time. Anyway, I listened to little junior brother and used my usual attacks. My attacks couldn't even withstand a single blow from the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. However, a few of my attacks still hit him. They shouldn't have caused any damage to him, but they still easily broke his defense. Little junior brother must have said that because he saw something wrong with the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, the Dragon Lord of Heaven said with a smile. Everyone looked at Yi Tianyun, wanting to get an explanation from him. That's about right. I saw that his body was a bit strange and his astral power wasn't stable enough. Therefore, I speculated that he must have been injured during his recent cultivation. He could have easily broken his defense with just a slight attack, Yi Tianyun explained. He had easily found the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's biggest weakness through the appraisal eye. He didn't need to use too much power. He just needed to hit him. But why didn't you just attack the weakness? Someone immediately asked. If I said it and did things too deliberately, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven would be on guard. As long as we guard against that weakness, we won't have a high chance of winning. Yi Tianyun smiled. Everything was within his expectations. After hearing his explanation, everyone finally knew what was going on. It was all part of his plan. If he had told the Phoenix Lord of Heaven that he had targeted the opponent's weakness right from the start, wouldn't he be telling the opponent that he was going to attack the opponent's weakness? That's amazing. You saw it. We couldn't tell at all. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but they were still shocked by Yi Tianyun's observation. Even Elder Xiao Tian didn't know about it, but Yi Futian noticed it. It was unbelievable. Yi Tianyun smiled. Everything would be easy as long as he knew the opponent's weakness. Therefore, there was no need to send the powerful Dragon Lord of Heaven. It would be enough to deal with him. Very soon, Elder Xiao Tian returned with a pale face. He said in a deep voice, I'll send Shan Yang Lord of Heaven for the next round. Who will you send? Chapter 1095. Everyone looked at Yi Tianyun, wanting to see who he would choose this time. They all looked at each other. There were so many people, who would they choose? The opponent was the Mountain Lord of Heaven, a rock. Whether it was defense or strength, he was a relatively strong existence. With one punch, he would be easily destroyed. There were very few people present who could compare to the Mountain Lord of Heaven, unless the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven or the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven went up. But they couldn't send the two of them up. This was awkward. They wanted to see who Yi Tianyun would choose this time. Such a troublesome opponent, could it be that he also had a weakness? Or did he have some other strength that could be used to attack him? Hurry up and choose. If you want to find any problems with the Mountain Lord of Heaven, then save yourself the trouble. His body is strong, there won't be any problems. Elder Xiao Tian sneered. This time, he had asked the Mountain Lord of Heaven thoroughly. He didn't want the situation with the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven to happen again. If they lost again, then they would completely lose. Now, everyone looked at each other. Was there really no other way? Didn't I choose long ago? The next one to go up will be me. Yi Tianyun walked out and looked at Elder Xiao Tian sharply. You're going up? Elder Xiao Tian was shocked. No matter how they thought, they didn't think that Yi Tianyun would go up personally. This was way beyond their expectations. How strong was Yi Tianyun? He was only a 7th-tier Earth monarch. He could have broken through to the 8th-tier Earth monarch, but he wasn't in a hurry. Recently, there were a lot of things to do, so he could only delay it. He didn't break through immediately. Therefore, in the eyes of others, he was at most a 7th-tier Earth monarch. This cultivation against a 5th-stage Heaven monarch. Wasn't this courting death? That's right, I'm going up. Is there a problem? Yi Tianyun said calmly, this doesn't seem to be against the rules, right? Of course it's not against the rules, but are you sure you want to do this? Elder Xiao Tian suspected that Yi Tianyun had gone mad. There was such a huge gap between their cultivations, yet he still chose to take the field himself. Elder Xiao Tian suspected that he had gone crazy. I'm sure I will, Yi Tianyun said calmly. All right. Elder Xiao Tian looked at Elder East Cloud and said, Elder East Cloud, I didn't do it on purpose. He chose it himself. It has nothing to do with me. Elder East Cloud and the others were all shocked. Who would have thought that Yi Tianyun would personally go into battle? With such a huge difference in cultivation, it was easy for problems to arise. We believe in junior brother. Since this is his choice, we have nothing to say. Senior sister Huolian and the others nodded. They didn't try to persuade Yi Tianyun not to do so. Even senior sister Huolian laughed because she remembered something. During the examination, even the flame Chelene was sent flying by him. This was enough to show that his strength was quite domineering. She didn't know how much potential Yi Tianyun had yet to unleash, but his strength definitely wouldn't be weak. Since he could make this request, then he definitely had a chance of winning. Otherwise, why would Yi Tianyun bring it up? Yes, I respect my disciple's choice. Elder East Cloud also said. Elder Xiao Tian was shocked. He thought that Elder Xiao Tian would try to dissuade him. Who knew that it would be so pointless and really let Yi Tianyun take the field himself? Very well. Since you're so bold, then let me see how strong you are. Elder Xiao Tian glanced at the mountain rock Heavenly Lord and sent a voice transmission. You must beat this kid to death. Don't show any mercy. Also, you must be more vigilant. I don't know what that kid is thinking. Go all out if you can. Elder Xiao Tian, you're too nervous. This kid's cultivation is so low. At most, he has some tricks up his sleeve. In the face of absolute power, these tricks are all trash. Lord of Heaven was full of confidence in himself. His opponent was so far away from him. If he couldn't even win this, he might as well commit suicide. Since you're so confident, then I'll leave it to you. If you lose. Elder Xiao Tian's eyes were cold. He didn't even need to finish his sentence to know what he was trying to say. Lord of Heaven nodded forcefully. He knew that he couldn't lose. Elder Xiao Tian cared a lot about his face. He already looked down on Elder East Cloud. If he lost to Elder East Cloud's disciple, where would he put his face? Soon after, they all went up. When they stood on the stage, they all exploded. With such a huge disparity in cultivation, he still sent his disciple up. Wasn't he just giving away money? I won't place a bet this time. The situation is a bit special. If the disparity is too great, then it can't be considered a bet. The shopkeeper's words disappointed many customers who wanted to place a bet. Originally, they could have just closed their eyes and placed their bets on Lord of Heaven. They didn't need to choose anything else. Who knew that he wouldn't place a bet? It was really disappointing. The shopkeeper wasn't an idiot. With such a huge disparity in cultivation, if he still placed a bet, wouldn't he suffer a huge loss? He didn't want to suffer such a loss. After all, opening a restaurant wasn't for charity. It was to earn money. It seems like the shopkeeper is taking care of you. If you bet all at once again, you'll suffer a huge loss. Elder Xiao Tian didn't forget to give them a cold shoulder. Our little junior brother won't lose. That's right. Don't think that Lord of Heaven can win. Our little junior brother is even more powerful. They all had full confidence in Yi Tianyun. After experiencing all this, they had a deeper understanding of Yi Tianyun. They felt that he was unfathomable and was definitely a powerful cultivator. Powerful? Are you kidding me? Elder Xiao Tian shook his head. With such a huge disparity in cultivation, what can a human do? If it were any other race, I would still think that they have a chance. But a human, HMPH. While they were talking, Yi Tianyun and Lord of Heaven had already started fighting. Lord of Heaven was bare-handed. It wasn't that he didn't have a weapon, but his fists were more powerful. His body didn't seem to have any bright spots, but when he swung his huge fists down, it was like a huge mountain pressing down. I'd like to see what tricks you have up your sleeves. Lord of Heaven faced the attack head-on. At the same time, he stared at Yi Tianyun and didn't relax at all. He wanted to see what tricks Yi Tianyun had up his sleeves, such as sneak attacks from the side or some other tricks. Unexpectedly, Yi Tianyun didn't move at all. When he smashed over, Yi Tianyun swung his fist at the same time. Fist against fist. There weren't any tricks. It was a very simple and violent fist against fist. Is he an idiot? Fist against fist, I'm dying of laughter. Fighting fist against Lord of Heaven, this is his ability. Chapter 1096. Rocky Lord of Heaven and Yi Tianyun's fists collided. In the end, Rocky Lord of Heaven was sent flying. This result was unbelievable. Rocky Lord of Heaven was from the giant rock tribe. Most importantly, his cultivation was higher than Yi Tianyun's. Who knew that he would still be crushed? This was unbelievable. Rocky Lord of Heaven was sent flying. The thick rock on his arm started to crack. It was obviously shattered by Yi Tianyun's overbearing fist. On the other hand, there was nothing wrong with Yi Tianyun's fist. Apart from taking a few steps back, he was fine. It's really tough. Yi Tianyun smiled. He activated the dragon god bloodline in his body and circulated it in his body. In terms of strength, he would never lose to anyone. Rocky Lord of Heaven's cultivation was higher than his. But when had he ever been afraid of anyone? From the appraisal eye, he could see that Rocky Lord of Heaven was not as scary as he had imagined. Especially as his cultivation increased and he absorbed more astral energy from the heavenly tribulation, his physique was greatly strengthened. Even Rocky Lord of Heaven might not be a match for him. What? Rocky Lord of Heaven quickly stopped. He felt the pain on his fist. It was unbelievable. He thought that Yi Tianyun would use some tricks. But now, it seemed that there was no trick at all. Yi Tianyun had fought him head-on. Most importantly, he had lost. While he was stunned, Yi Tianyun suddenly stepped on the ground and rushed towards him like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Yi Tianyun's whole body's power was at its maximum, especially his dragon god bloodline. The effects of his equipment were also activated to the maximum. If not for this, he would not have been able to fight someone of a higher cultivation. After all, his opponent's cultivation was much higher than his. If he did not have other comprehensive strengths, he would not be able to deal with him. What are you waiting for? Yi Tianyun swung his leg and lashed out fiercely. Mountain Lord of Heaven quickly raised his arm to block. Boom! The mountain rock heavenly monarch was sent retreating by the kick. The hard rock wall on the surface of his body immediately caved in, and dense cracks appeared on his arm. Even the powerful defense of the Lord of Heaven could not easily withstand the violent power. This scene shocked everyone. Most of them thought that Yi Tianyun would use some kind of trick or maneuver to trick the Lord of Heaven. Now, it seemed that they had been too naive. Yi Tianyun did not need to do that at all. He had just used his most violent strength to smash the mountain rock, the Lord of Heaven. This kid's strength is so strong. He's a human? Even Elder East Cloud and the others were shocked. Although they knew that Yi Tianyun's strength was not weak, they did not expect him to suppress the Lord of Heaven in such a dominating manner. While they were still in shock, Yi Tianyun did not give his opponent a chance to catch his breath. He continued to attack ferociously. He did not use any special moves. He simply used his fists to smash. Don't be arrogant. The Lord of Heaven was also angry. The cracks on his body began to repair rapidly. Soon, a thick rock wall was built on the surface of his body. His strength began to rise rapidly. He completely released the power of the Lord of Heaven. Heaven-shaking art. Heaven-shaking art. Yi Tianyun instantly turned into an extremely heavy body. At the same time, he used the heaven-shaking art. He increased his fighting strength by 10 times. The power of the planets in his body began to circulate wildly. His body, which did not look very big, was like a huge planet. He charged towards the Lord of Heaven. Boom! The two of them collided, and with a loud bang, the mountain rock heavenly monarch was sent flying. The thick rocks on his body were smashed into pieces. On the other hand, Yi Tianyun was completely fine. He did not even have a scratch on his body. Yi Tianyun was wearing the evil devil godly suit. His defense was so strong. Naturally, he was not afraid of the Lord of Heaven. On the surface, it looked like ordinary clothes. In reality, it was the evil devil godly suit. How could its defense be weak? However, when they collided, they still felt that the other party was quite hard. The Lord of Heaven was not a pushover. His body was also very strong. It was already shocking that he was injured by Yi Tianyun. The giant rock tribe had always had a strong defense. It was a great humiliation to be hit by a human. Mountain rock, use your weapon. Why are you using your fists? Use your weapon. Elder Xiao Tian, who was below the stage, shouted hurriedly. The Lord of Heaven definitely had a weapon that he could use. He might even be able to use it together to explode with even greater power. However, the Lord of Heaven did not hear him. He continued to use his hard body to collide with Yi Tianyun. He wanted to see who was harder. Damn it! He actually did not listen to me. Elder Xiao Tian gritted his teeth in anger. If the Lord of Heaven used a weapon, his chances of winning would undoubtedly increase greatly. He might even be able to crush Yi Tianyun. However, the Lord of Heaven did not use a weapon. He was about to explode in anger. Elder Xiao Tian, it seems that you do not understand your disciple's heart. As a member of the giant rock tribe, his opponent uses their fists and bodies to hit him. These are the two techniques that he is most proud of. Do you think he will use other techniques? Elder East Cloud laughed coldly at the side. Your disciple still knows the rules and knows what to do. The giant rock tribe was most proud of their fists and bodies. Now that they were being suppressed by Yi Tianyun, how could he admit defeat? Taking out a weapon was equivalent to admitting defeat. Thus, even if he lost, he had to use the most basic techniques to fight to the end. Nonsense. The process is not important. What is important is the result. Elder Xiao Tian did not care that much. He only wanted to win this match. Elder East Cloud shook his head. He could not be bothered with his disciples' thoughts. If he could not even understand his own disciples' thoughts, how could he be a master? However, the Lord of Heaven could not be bothered with him. He continued to use his most primitive abilities to continuously collide with Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun also did not use any weapons. He continued to use all kinds of fists to smash. The Lord of Heaven was sent flying again and again. They were both using the same techniques, but the Lord of Heaven was slightly inferior. The Lord of Heaven also used martial arts. Combined with his bloodline defense, he should be able to fight against many opponents of the same level. However, against Yi Tianyun, he was filled with a deep sense of powerlessness. He was completely crushed. Under the final punch, the Lord of Heaven was sent flying and vomited blood. When he landed heavily on the ground, he did not faint. Instead, he collapsed on the ground and laughed with tears in his eyes. He never thought that he would lose to a human, an opponent that he could never imagine. You're really tough. Yi Tianyun waved his hand and looked at the Lord of Heaven lying on the rock. He smiled faintly and said, "But thank you for being so persistent in fighting against me. We, the giant rock tribe, will not use any weapons when facing an opponent like this." The Lord of Heaven sat up and said in admiration, "You are the first human that I have met with such a tough body. I admire you." Chapter 1097. Yi Tianyun won this round in the most domineering manner. Previously, Elder Xiao Tian had set the best of 3, and Yi Tianyun's side had won 2 rounds consecutively. There was no need to compete in the remaining round, and he had won it directly. Not only that, but the Lord of Heaven also admired him greatly and vaguely saw him as a friend. How was he still an enemy? He was almost becoming a friend. Elder Xiao Tian, you've lost. Elder Dong Yun looked at Elder Xiao Tian. He was so happy that he almost laughed out loud. Elder Xiao Tian's expression was ugly. He never thought that he would lose to Elder Dong Yun, who was at the bottom of the Hall of Gods. He had always disapproved of Elder Dongyun's way of doing things. He didn't reply. Instead, he walked over to the Lord of Heaven and said coldly, "Mountain, mountain, what's the meaning of this? I asked you to take out your weapon just now. Why didn't you do so? Elder Xiao Tian, our giant rock tribe has our own rules. The other party didn't use any weapons and used our greatest advantage to attack. We can't possibly break the rules." The Lord of Heaven had already crawled up. His injuries weren't very serious. Although he had vomited blood from Yi Tianyun's attack, it was only an ordinary injury and not a very serious one. A loser is a loser. What's the point of breaking the rules? You're a loser now. Get out. I won't take you in as a disciple, especially a disciple with such a rotten brain. Elder Xiao Tian was completely furious. This meant that Mountain didn't listen to him, so there was no need for him to stay by his side. The Lord of Heaven's body stiffened. He slowly knelt down and said in a deep voice, that disciple was unfilial. "I'm sorry, Elder." With that, he kowtowed 3 times and completely severed all ties with Elder Xiao Tian. From now on, the two of them would have nothing to do with each other. Elder Xiao Tian coldly snorted. He turned to look at Elder Dongyun and said, "Seems like your new disciple isn't bad. He even knows how to make use of such dead rules. I'm really looking forward to the competition in the palace. When the time comes, I'll see what other skills they have besides strength." After saying that, he waved his hand and left with his people, as well as the defeated Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Although the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven had lost, he still obeyed Elder Xiao Tian's words. This was the main point. Losing wasn't scary. What was scary was not listening to his instructions and losing. That was what he couldn't tolerate the most. After Elder Xiao Tian left, they all looked at the Lord of Heaven with sympathy. "Shanyang, Lord of Heaven, why don't you join us?" Yi Tianyun walked over and smiled. The Lord of Heaven was not a sinister person. He had always been straightforward. This could be seen from the way they talked about rules. This fellow had a one-track mind and had always abided by the clan's rules. "Join your side." The Lord of Heaven was stunned. He was originally a disciple of the Palace of Gods. At most, he would just have to change masters. There wasn't much of a problem. Can I really join?" He hesitated for a while and finally asked. He still wanted to stay in the Palace of Gods. "There's nothing you can't do. The prerequisite is that you can pass our assessment." The Imperial Dragon of Heaven walked out and grinned. "Your character isn't bad. I admire you. However, you still have to pass the assessment. Otherwise, you won't be able to join." The others smiled and nodded. Although the Mountain Rock Heavenly Monarch was on the same side as Elder Xiao Tian, their relationship wasn't too deep. Especially when he didn't listen to Elder Xiao Tian's words. This made them happy. Some people had their own bottom line. The Lord of Heaven had his own bottom line. Only a cultivator with a bottom line would be able to go further in life. Thank you. The Lord of Heaven was extremely grateful. "I will work hard to pass everyone's assessment. If I can't, I won't have the face to join you. Let's not talk about the assessment for now. Let's drink first." Elder Dongyun was in a good mood. He had just won against Elder Xiao Tian. How could he not be happy? They returned to the private room and continued to enjoy the wine. Without Elder Xiao Tian, they instantly felt that the wine was especially fragrant and sweet. "Little junior brother, I didn't know that you knew the rules of other clans. If the Lord of Heaven used a weapon, what do you think your chances of winning are?" The Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven asked. The others looked over. Even the Lord of Heaven looked over. What if he used a weapon? Yi Tianyun slowly put down his wine cup and smiled. "Let's drink. Let's not talk about this anymore." Seeing that Yi Tianyun wasn't willing to answer, they could only stop asking. Some felt that he could still win, while others felt that he couldn't. Yi Tianyun drank another cup and didn't say anything else. The result was needless to say. Let alone the Lord of Heaven using a weapon, even if he burned his essence blood to fight him, he wouldn't be the slightest bit weaker. It's about time to improve my cultivation. Things here were temporarily put on hold. The next step was to go to heaven-pilfering sacred land to cultivate and improve his cultivation. Soon, things here were over. Through this banquet, their relationship improved a lot. Especially after this duel, they had gained a deeper understanding of him, and the relationship between them had undoubtedly improved by leaps and bounds. After saying that they were going to heaven-pilfering sacred land, they all revealed envious gazes. The Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven and the others didn't have the chance to go to heaven-pilfering sacred land. It was an extremely strict place and not so easy to go. They needed a lot of contribution points to be able to stay in heaven-pilfering sacred land for a while. For example, if Yi Tianyun wanted to cultivate, he would at most be given a month's time. It was enough to show how precious it was. According to Elder Go Huang's words, Yi Tianyun could look for him once he was ready. If he wanted to go to heaven-pilfering sacred land, he had to go through the approval of these high-level elders. Even Elder Dong Yun couldn't do it. Under the guidance of the guards, Zhong Xian soon arrived before Elder Go Huang. There wasn't any trouble this time. It was obvious that Elder Go Huang had left some instructions on the token in order to avoid any unnecessary trouble. This would undoubtedly make things much more convenient. You're finally here. I know about your situation. You just joined the God's Creation Palace and already caused such a huge commotion. Elder Go Huang shook his head and laughed. Furthermore, you even joined Elder Dong Yun's camp. It seems like your character isn't bad. Elder Dong Yun's side isn't bad. In the past, Elder Dong Yun was a super genius. It's just that his personality was different and the cultivation path he took was slightly different. No matter what, he's definitely a good elder. Nothing here could be hidden from the eyes of these elders. As long as he wanted to understand, he would be able to know everything in the next second. Elder Dong Yun is naturally a good elder. Yi Tianyun smiled and said, then, Elder Go Huang, I wonder if you can go to heaven-pilfering sacred land now? Chapter 1098. Elder Go Huang brought Yi Tianyun to tear through space and quickly arrived at the side of the teleportation formation. This teleportation formation was a little special. There were 2 guards guarding it. The other teleportation formations did not have any guards here, which proved that the place this teleportation formation reached was very important. Elder Go Huang. The 2 guards bowed to express their respect. Elder Go Huang nodded and brought Yi Tianyun to the teleportation formation. Then, he placed his hand on the stone tablet beside him. After transferring the star power in, the teleportation formation quickly lit up and enveloped the 2 of them. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared and appeared in another area. Yi Tianyun looked around. There was nothing around him. Everything was empty. The place where the teleportation formation was located was even more peculiar. It was on top of a floating boulder and not on a planet. Without a doubt, this place was very remote. The heaven-stealing divine land was actually in such a remote place, and it seemed to be very strict. He could tell that there weren't many people who could truly touch that stone tablet. This meant that if they wanted to come here, they had to personally lead the way. Otherwise, they would not be able to come here. It was so strict that it was truly astonishing. It seemed that it would be extremely difficult to come here through other methods. If he didn't even know where he was, how would he be able to come here? Isn't this heaven-stealing divine land a little too strict? Yi Tianyun sighed from the side. The heaven-stealing divine land is the cultivation ground of our 5 divine domains, so it will definitely be stricter. There is even a strict time limit. How much time can be allocated to each divine domain is fixed. Elder Go Huang said because there are so many cultivators, there is very little time for them to spread out. Unless it is a relatively outstanding disciple, they will not be given this reward. I can see that the other divine domains' teleportation formations are nearby. Yi Tianyun turned his head to look. The surroundings were empty, and he did not see any other teleportation formations. More or less, it's not far from here. I will bring you to the heaven-stealing divine land now. Use it well, it will be enough for you to break through to the 9th refinement Earth Lord. Only by reaching the 9th level of the Earth Monarch realm can one be considered to be standing on a high platform. Elder Go Huang was very much looking forward to Yi Tianyun breaking through to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch. Although the 8th refinement Earth Monarch was not bad, the 9th refinement was the true peak. They would only allow cultivators who could break through to the 9th refinement of the Earth Monarch realm to cultivate in such top-notch cultivation grounds. If they stopped at the 8th refinement of the Earth Monarch realm, then they would not have such a chance. Unless it was a disciple who had made great contributions, no one would be able to come in and take a look. The Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven and the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven were not bad, but they were not judged to have the qualifications to break through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch. In addition, they did not have too many contribution points, so they were not allowed to come. Thinking about it, the heaven-pilfering sacred land was so big, the resources were definitely not limitless. Now that it was managed by the 5 divine domains, they had strict restrictions on the number of people they could send. Otherwise, the entire heaven-pilfering divine land would turn into a wasteland. Yi Tianyun nodded. He also wanted to break through to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch realm. After all, this was the goal of his current main mission. Immediately, Elder Go Huang brought him and directly flew forward. Under the guidance of Elder Go Huang, it could be said that it was pitch black in front of them. They could not see anything. It should be said that all the light seemed to have been sucked away, which was why they could not see any light. Yi Tianyun could clearly feel that the surrounding star power had been sucked away. It could even be said that there was not a bit of star power in the surroundings. It was an extreme vacuum zone. The preparations are here. Elder Go Huang stretched out his hand and pointed. There was a pitch-black light in front of them, and it looked like a black ball. This could not be judged by the eyes, but by one's perception. The surrounding space was already pitch-black enough. Even if it emitted a pitch-black light, it was still pitch-black. Yi Tianyun could feel that this pitch-black ball contained a special and strange energy. It was as if the energy that was extracted was gathered here. How did the heaven-pilfering divine ground form? Yi Tianyun was very curious about this. No one knows. When we discovered it, it was already here. It just so happens to be sandwiched in the middle of our 5 divine realms. It belongs to a neutral training ground. Elder Go Huang took out a jade pendant and handed it to Yi Tianyun. This jade pendant can only allow you to last in the heaven-pilfering divine ground for a month. Of course, this time point is for the outside world. The time inside often changes, so I can't say what the situation is. But there is one thing you have to remember. When this jade pendant is about to disappear, it is time for you to leave. If you don't leave, you won't be able to come out and will be completely trapped inside. His expression was serious. It did not seem like he was lying, but he was really serious. How could a training ground be so dangerous? It seemed that this jade pendant was equivalent to a protective talisman. If the protective talisman was gone, then it would be devoured and would never be able to come out. Got it. Yi Tianyun held the jade pendant tightly. It's good that you know. 1 month later, I will come here to pick you up. Elder Go Huang reached out and patted his shoulder. He smiled. But there is no need to be so nervous. With this jade pendant, you will be very safe. As for inside, there will be super geniuses from other divine realms. Just ignore them. Yi Tianyun nodded. After bidding farewell to Elder Go Huang, he directly drilled into the black ball and disappeared in front of Elder Go Huang. Kid, I hope you will be able to obtain a great fortune in here. Only when Earth Monarch Zhu Lian breaks through to the Lord of Heaven can he be considered the true Lord of Heaven. He shook his head, turned around and left. 1 month later, he would come here to pick him up. When Yi Tianyun passed through the black ball, he immediately felt the jade pendant in his bosom become scorching hot. Following that, a bit of white smoke drifted out from it. Using his spiritual sense, he could clearly feel that the jade pendant was starting to disappear bit by bit. However, this process was very slow. At the same time, the jade pendant turned into a protective shield, firmly wrapping him inside. When he entered completely, it was no longer pitch black inside. Instead, it was a strange, colorful world. It was completely different from the pitch black outside. This place looked like a fairyland. There were spirit herbs and spirit trees everywhere. On the side, there was a large pile of spirit spring water. As long as it was water, it was a spirit spring water. As long as it was a tree, It was a spirit tree of a high grade. As long as it was a grass, it was a spirit grass of a high grade. Even a piece of stone was a good forging material. It could be said that everything here was a treasure. Not a single item was a waste or an ordinary item. This scene deeply shocked him. This was the heaven-pilfering divine land. It really was a divine land. There were treasures everywhere. Chapter 1099. There were treasures everywhere, none of them were useless. This was like entering a mountain of gold and silver. The streets were filled with treasures. Anything he picked up casually was a treasure. Even the air here felt like he was inhaling an extremely dense star power that reverberated in his body. Just breathing in here was dozens of times better than outside. This meant that just breathing here for a day was equivalent to cultivating outside for a month. This difference was imaginable. If he cultivated here, wouldn't it mean that he could fly? This place is too magical, as expected of the heaven-pilfering sacred land. Everything around here must have been stolen. Yi Tianyun was still deeply shocked. He had seen many cultivation places, but he had never seen such a heaven-defying existence. When he used the appraisal eye to scan the area, he saw an extremely terrifying force at the bottom. There was no doubt that there was an extremely huge core inside the heaven-pilfering sacred land, and it was an extremely violent one. If it wasn't a violent core, how could it devour the surrounding world? Not to mention devouring the surrounding world, even he himself was gradually being devoured. It was only because he was wearing the jade pendant that he could survive here. After entering, he finally understood what it meant. This place had been devouring intruders. As long as it was an external object, it would be quickly devoured and assimilated. This was the terrifying nature of the heaven-pilfering sacred land. If the jade pendant was gone, the result was obvious, it would be devoured. As for what it would become, it was not clear. Of course, without the jade pendant, he believed that it would not be devoured immediately, but would also disappear bit by bit. It should be related to cultivation. The stronger one was, the longer one could survive without the jade pendant. Just to be safe, he must have left before the jade pendant disappeared. If he was trapped here, it would not be worth it. Shortly after, Yi Tianyun landed on the ground and walked over. The feeling of his feet was no different from the outside, it could be said to be exactly the same. He reached out to pick up a stone. This was a rare flower jade stone, a material used to make high-grade reincarnation-level treasures. When he picked it up, he immediately felt a strong sense of rejection from the material, as if it was unwilling to let him touch it. It was as if it was unwilling to be touched by him. Following that, it seemed to have come to life and kept jumping in his hand, trying to break free from his grasp. There's such a feeling of rejection. Yi Tianyun felt a little strange. He immediately stuffed the jade flower stone into his storage ring to see if it would break free. To his surprise, he found that he couldn't store it in his storage ring at all. It was stuck outside, unable to enter at all. Space repulsion. This place is really strange. This heaven-pilfering divine ground doesn't allow people to bring anything out. Yi Tianyun looked at the treasures around him. No wonder there were still materials here after so long. If it could be taken away, it would definitely be taken away by a large amount. There were so many materials. Although some of them were not of high quality, they would not be a problem for star venerates or earth venerates. Especially with so many disciples in the god domain, no amount of resources would be enough. If he could, he would. Who would have thought that he couldn't even bring it with him? So many treasures could only be seen. What a pity. Take it away. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed, and the jade flower stone in his hand disappeared as he forcibly put it into his inventory. At this moment, the jade flower stone lay obediently in his inventory, unable to leave. No matter how stubborn it was, he could still take it away. This was the wondrous use of the system's inventory. It looks like I can still take it away. I thought I couldn't. Yi Tianyun's eyes lit up. This meant that he could take away a large number of treasures. Others might not be able to take them away, but he could. The inventory in his body could be said to be endless, it could not be filled at all. He could take as much as he wanted. Immediately after, he plundered and collected everything he needed. No matter how much they struggled, it was useless. He directly collected them and cut off the connection between them. Awesome. Yi Tianyun felt very refreshed. He easily collected a large pile of treasures. However, he didn't take everything. He only took what he felt was not bad. If he took everything, it would be too crazy. After collecting a large pile, he checked the surroundings and didn't find any cultivators. It was obvious that there were very few people here. The jade flower stone was the most expensive. He could feel that this jade flower stone was very special. According to the price, it was at least a low-grade heavenly Dao treasure. To use a low-grade heavenly Dao treasure to send people in, the price was really high. Therefore, it was certain that there were very few people here. Other than the high price of sending people in, there was also the restriction. As for what the restriction was, it was not clear. It's about time to go through the tribulation. Yi Tianyun felt that he had time now. He could choose to go through the tribulation to break through to the 8th refinement, and then directly break through to the 9th refinement. Level up to the 8th refinement. Ding, experience deducted. Congratulations to player Yi Tianyun for successfully breaking through to the 8th refinement. Kaboom! Then, thick clouds formed in the sky. Although this place devoured everything, it could still form the tribulation. However, when the tribulation appeared, it started to be devoured at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this time, the tribulation started to get angry. Violent lightning started to strike from the sky, and its power increased rapidly. However, the devouring speed here was not just for show. It started to devour at a crazy speed. Of course, Yi Tianyun suffered. Very soon, he had to endure the violent lightning. After he blocked it, he realized that he had already absorbed a little more than half of the lightning. The rest was completely bearable. It seems that breaking through here will be much easier than usual. Yi Tianyun noticed the problem. This world could devour the tribulation, which meant that it could help to slow down the power of the tribulation. The reason why there were so few 9th refinement Earthlords was mainly because the test of the 9th refinement was too scary. Of course, the most important thing was when the 9th refinement Earthlord broke through to the Lord of Heaven. That was the most difficult. Because the 9th refinement Earthlord was scary enough. If one broke through to the Lord of Heaven, even the heavens would not be willing to accept it. Therefore, many 8th refinement Earthlords thought that breaking through to the 9th refinement Earthlord was a success. Little did they know that breaking through to the Lord of Heaven was the scariest. If one went through the tribulation here, it would be much easier. It might still be limited, but at least it would be greatly reduced. Chapter 1100. Boom. The heavenly tribulation became more and more intense as if it was angered by the heaven-pilfering divine ground. However, Yi Tianyun didn't wait for it to continue condensing. He directly rushed forward and wanted to destroy the heavenly tribulation with one punch. As he approached, the heavenly tribulation was completely enraged. It was fine if it was disturbed by an external force, but it didn't expect the tribulation transcendence to dare to destroy it. In an instant, the heavenly tribulation turned into several lightning dragons that swallowed it whole. Break for me. Yi Tianyun's eyes flickered. Crazy damage mode exploded. He directly punched forward and the entire heavenly tribulation was easily destroyed. Nothing could withstand his violent power, not even the heavenly tribulation. No matter how powerful the heavenly tribulation was, it couldn't be that much stronger than the tribulation transcendence. Under the crazy damage mode, it directly reached a level of crushing. Under his all-out attack, the heavenly tribulation was easily destroyed. It was no different from before. In fact, it was even a bit weaker than last time. Without a doubt, this was all thanks to the heaven-pilfering divine ground. Fortunately, the reward that should be given would still be given. The destructive power of the heavenly tribulation began to descend. It turned into star power and poured into his body, constantly nourishing his body and strengthening his meridians. This feeling of being bathed in a spring breeze made him feel very comfortable. This was the feeling he wanted. That was why he broke the heavenly tribulation time and time again to obtain the purest energy. I finally passed. After Yi Tianyun woke up from meditation, the places that were originally damaged by the heavenly tribulation were quickly repaired. This kind of repair method made even him speechless. This was like an incomparably huge life that could quickly heal the wounds on his body. Next, he could rush to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch. This process wouldn't be particularly long, especially with so many resources here. To him, breaking through to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch wasn't a problem. It might be a problem for others, but it didn't pressure him at all. No matter how powerful the heavenly tribulation was, could it be more powerful than his crazy damage mode? He immediately flew away to see if there was anything else he could plunder. Not long after he left, a few people flew over from the side, all of them looking at this area. Damn it, he ran away. The young man frowned. That's right. How could he pass the tribulation so quickly? He clearly felt like he was going through a tribulation just now, but in just a short while, he has already passed the tribulation successfully. Another young man asked doubtfully. We can only say that we came too late. The other party just happened to pass the tribulation. Otherwise, we would definitely be able to snatch the opponent's jade pendant. That way, we would be able to stay here for a while longer. Another young man felt very regretful. There was no doubt that the three of them were in cahoots, and they wanted to rob Yi Tianyun of the jade pendant. Fortunately, he had left, or else a fierce battle would have ensued. Don't worry, that guy must still be here. Let's split up and look for him, one of them suggested. The other two nodded and quickly disappeared from the spot, splitting up to search in other places. Yi Tianyun had no idea what was going on. As he flew forward, he saw quite a few natural treasures along the way. He felt that they would be useful to him, so he put them all into his inventory. After plundering along the way, a special island came into view. It was surrounded by rainbows, and it looked like a paradise island. Most importantly, there were many cultivators on the island. He thought that there would be fewer people here, but he did not expect to see more than 10 people meditating on the island. It felt like everyone was gathered here, meditating and cultivating. Without a doubt, the cultivation environment here was excellent. Otherwise, they would not have come here. They could not plunder any treasures here, so they could only look for a good place to cultivate. Otherwise, they would not have gathered here. When Yi Tianyun approached, they all looked over. When they saw an unfamiliar face, they took a few more glances at him. At the same time, the token in Yi Tianyun's hand flashed, which meant that there were people from the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm here. It would only flash when they met people from the same sect. When he looked up, one of them opened his eyes, stood up, and walked over. A junior from the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm? The person who walked over was a level 5 Lord of Heaven. His cultivation was quite high, and his overall level was shocking. He was definitely a genius. This place was also suitable for the Lord of Heaven's cultivation, and he could also improve by a lot. After all, the star power here was too thick. Yes, I did not expect to see Senior here. How should I address you, Senior? Yi Tianyun saw that the other party was quite friendly. It seemed like he did not discriminate against cultivators of other races. You can call me Senior, Purple Crown. What about you, Junior? There was a purple crown on his head, and it was quite interesting to call him Senior. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven was not a human, but a phoenix. This was quite friendly. I am Tianyun. Yi Tianyun introduced himself. So it is Junior Tianyun. I did not expect you to come here alone. Did no one else come with you? The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven asked. No, Elder Go Huang told me to come down by myself. He did not let anyone else come with me. Yi Tianyun asked doubtfully, is there a problem? There is. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven's face darkened, and he transmitted his voice, if you go alone, it is very easy for you to be ambushed, and you will die. Although I do not have any proof, I feel that someone thinks so. We are not from the same holy realm, so it is better to be careful. Is there such a thing? The elder said that there is no problem. Yi Tianyun frowned. He knew that this kind of thing would definitely happen, but Elder Go Huang said that there was no need to worry. Yes, they are very secretive. I could only find some clues, but I do not know who it is. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven said, the elder said that there is no problem, but that is based on the situation where there is someone watching. If you act alone, you will be ambushed, but you do not know who it is. This is the most troublesome thing. If they knew, they would definitely be punished. That's good. Besides senior apprentice brother Purple Crown, are there any other senior apprentice brothers? Yi Tianyun asked. There are, but they are not here. I am cultivating on Divine Dream Island to deduce what will happen in the future. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven explained, since you have just arrived, you should cultivate here. This place is very safe. No one will dare to attack you, especially with so many people here. Divine Dream Island. As Yi Tianyun looked at the island, information immediately appeared with his appraisal eye. Divine Dream Island, able to allow one to cultivate in their dreams, greatly increasing their cultivation speed. The main function is to deduce the future martial arts cultivation method, or the future road of cultivation. The success rate of deduction varies from person to person. Chapter 1101. This heaven-pilfering divine land is really amazing. There is such a thing, it is undoubtedly equivalent to a treasure. It can deduce martial arts or meditate on problems. In other words, if you encounter a bottleneck, you can cultivate here and enter a dreamland state, and then you can deduce how to break through the bottleneck. This is naturally quite amazing, no wonder this group of people meditate here. It is not necessarily a bottleneck, it can be a breakthrough in martial arts, but when you cultivate to a high level, you feel that it is difficult to break through. This Divine Dream Island is undoubtedly a good choice, but if you want to come here to cultivate, it depends on personal contribution. Although everyone here is a genius, geniuses also have bottlenecks. For example, the Purple Crown Lord of Heaven in front of him has a bottleneck. This is not a shameful thing. If there is no bottleneck, he would have already rushed all the way. Of course, Yi Tianyun does not have a bottleneck. The real difficulty is the problem of experience. But experience accumulates, there is no bottleneck at all. That's right, this Divine Dream Island is extremely mysterious. You can even cultivate and perceive in your dreams. The Purple Crown Heavenly Monarch pulled Lin Ming over and smiled. There isn't much time left, so hurry up and cultivate. When the cultivation is over, we will go and meet with the other senior brothers. Yi Tianyun nodded and sat down to cultivate. Soon, the Purple Crown Lord of Heaven entered into a state of cultivation, but he did not immediately fall asleep, but began to draw lottery. He still has 2 lottery chances that have not been used. This time he has free time to see what he can draw. He felt that he should draw a repeat. After all, he has been drawing the same thing recently. It is really not a feeling. Of course, there is no problem with drawing a repeat. After all, this can save a lot of crazy points. It is still a good choice. Lottery. Then a huge lottery will begin to appear in the void and began to spin in front of him. He silently activated Luck Aura. The powerful Luck Aura enveloped him. He wanted to see what he can draw. Finally, the needle of this lottery wheel stopped at the martial arts type. Martial arts? Yi Tianyun was startled. This was the first time he had seen this type of martial arts. However, he was still looking forward to it. After that, the crystal box fell to the ground. He picked it up and opened it, and a familiar martial technique entered his eyes, the Skyquake Divine Technique. Sky-shaking divine art, strengthened version low-grade reincarnation level martial art, able to greatly increase one's weight, shocking the heavens and earth. Enhanced version? Yi Tianyun was delighted. The heaven-shaking divine art was still very useful, but it was already at max level. Previously, the heaven-shaking divine art was only at the heaven rank at its maximum level, which wasn't particularly high. Now that he had drawn a higher version, it meant that he could continue to level up. Under the violent gravity, what wouldn't he crush? Not bad. Although it was a repetition, he still felt very happy. After all, he liked this kind of martial arts very much. Come to think of it, the martial arts he knew were still relatively few, especially the high-level ones. The previous pile was basically trash, and the highest was only at the heaven tier. If there were no reincarnation tier martial arts or above, it would be impossible to look at it. Again, Yi Tianyun drew again, and the huge lottery wheel continued to spin. Every time he got something, it would make him excited. After all, this was a brand new lottery wheel. Even if he got a repetition, he would still be able to get a higher level one. He still felt that it was not bad. Ding! The needle of the lottery wheel finally stopped on martial arts. It was still on martial arts. This made him laugh. He didn't expect that he would get what he wanted. The crystal box fell from above, and he held it in his hand. Looking at the crystal box, he shook his head and smiled. I hope it will give me another surprise. Shortly after, he slowly opened it, and a brand new martial art appeared in front of him, Flying Divine Art. Flying Divine Art, low-grade reincarnation level martial art, able to greatly increase one's speed and agility. Best matched with the sky-shaking divine art. Yi Tianyun's eyes lit up. This flying divine art could be matched with the sky-shaking divine art. When using the sky-shaking divine art, due to the increase in weight, both speed and agility would be greatly reduced. Now that the flying divine art could greatly increase speed and agility, it was indeed an excellent match. When used together, it would be successful in battle. He didn't expect to get a good reward in 2 lottery draws, which made him feel very comfortable. Should I continue to draw? Yi Tianyun looked at the current crazy point. There was still a lot left. Before, he was willing to use it for lottery draw, but now if he didn't draw, he wouldn't be able to get a good martial art. Killing others can get a good martial art, but it seems that it is not as good as the lottery draw. Unless he gets a more powerful heavenly path martial art, then there is still some hope. Forget it, I will use it for the time being. When I am in urgent need of it, I will draw again. Yi Tianyun didn't continue to draw. After all, a lottery draw costs tens of millions of crazy point, which is still quite painful. If he draws some ordinary points, it will be even more painful. When he wanted to cultivate, he found that there was a shocked gaze on the side. When he turned his head, the first thing he saw was not who was looking at him. He found that there are countless light spots constantly shrouding and gathering around him. Unknowingly, his body has gained hundreds of billions of EXP. What is going on? So much star power automatically gathered around him. This is amazing. This is too strange. We tried our best to absorb it, but he is actively gathering the star power. What is this situation? Does he have some kind of treasure that can attract the surrounding star power, so that he can cultivate effortlessly? All of them were stupefied, and they felt even more envy and jealousy. If they were able to obtain such a treasure, then it would undoubtedly allow their cultivations to improve greatly. Junior brother Tianyun, what is this situation? Did the elder give you some treasure? Purple Crown Lord of Heaven next to him was shocked. Yi Tianyun's whole body is shrouded in light spots, how can they not be shocked? Yi Tianyun remembered that his luck aura is not turned off. It seems that the luck aura caused the surrounding star power to gather. He was so focused on the lottery draw that he didn't pay attention to the situation around him. He didn't expect the luck aura to have the effect of guiding the surrounding star power, which shocked him. He immediately turned off the luck aura, and just when he stopped, the surrounding light spots quickly disappeared, but there are still some slowly gathering, but it is not as scary as before. You can even attract the star power if you have good luck. Chapter 1102. Yi Tianyun didn't expect that luck aura and luck value would have such an effect here, which made him feel very magical. There was no such situation in the outside world, but in Divine Dream Island, the star power would come to him on its own initiative. This undoubtedly greatly increased his cultivation speed and made it less strenuous for him. Although the star power here was very rich and he could absorb a lot with a casual breath, when he really absorbed it, it was like pulling something from the wall. Because the star power was fixed by heaven pilfering divine ground, if he wanted to absorb it, he had to spend a lot of effort. Yi Tianyun took the initiative to approach Yi Tianyun. The gap between them was huge, making the surrounding cultivators envious. They didn't know what kind of treasure he was holding to have such an effect. They didn't know what treasure he was holding. He was completely relying on his own luck value to attract them. If others didn't have such an effect, it meant that their luck value was not good. When he turned off the terrifying luck aura, the light quickly disappeared, leaving only a small amount of star power that came to him. Junior brother Tianyun, what's wrong? Don't you want to use that treasure? The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven saw the star power around Yi Tianyun gathering towards him. This is not a treasure, I absorbed it on my own initiative. Yi Tianyun shrugged helplessly. He wanted to keep using luck aura, but the consumption of luck aura was calculated by 1 second, and the consumption of crazy point was too much. Is this ability so magical? The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven enviously said, It seems that the martial arts you practice is quite special, we can't absorb so much. Immediately, he closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. After all, Yi Tianyun was not a treasure, he couldn't enjoy it, he could only rely on himself. Yi Tianyun ignored the gazes around him and closed his eyes to cultivate. He wanted to see what this divine dream island could deduce for him. As he immersed himself in it, he soon felt that he had entered a strange dream. He felt that he was facing a crazy heavenly tribulation. In front of him, there were countless divine thunders, covering every corner of the world, leaving him nowhere to escape. This is the heavenly tribulation that the 9 refinements Earth Lord is going to undergo. In this dream, Yi Tianyun saw an exaggerated scene. He was surrounded by divine lightning, and it was much stronger than before. It felt like they weren't even on the same level. It was more like they were going through some kind of punishment. But that was all. That was all there was to the image, and nothing else. Even if he woke up and entered the dream again, the result would still be the same. Divine Dream Island wasn't able to deduce many scenes. At most, it could provide 1 or 2 scenes. It was obvious that Yi Tianyun only had one scenario in mind, and that was to face this terrifying godly lightning. As for whether or not it was a test that the 9 refinements Earth Lord had to face, he was not very clear on this point. He only felt that the divine lightning around him was extremely terrifying. It made him feel powerless, as though he was facing a divine lord. Suppressing the world. If my heavenly tribulation becomes like this, it will be too difficult. I need to improve in all aspects. Yi Tianyun frowned. He felt that the difficulty wasn't ordinary. Even if he activated his crazy damage mode, he might not be able to withstand it. This was the reason why he was worried. If it was like usual, he could casually blow it up with a punch. It was just that his improvement was limited. After all, cultivation was the foundation of the foundation. Without a foundation of cultivation, it would be difficult to resist just by relying on defensive equipment. It shouldn't be the 9 refinements Earth Lord's heavenly tribulation. If that's the case, then no one will be able to pass it. Yi Tianyun shook his head, denying this information. This was an attack from a divine lord. How could it be the 9 refinements Earth Lord's test? After all, he had very little information. He wasn't sure if it was the 9 refinements Earth Lord's heavenly tribulation. After feeling it several times, he finally stopped. Instead, he cultivated here. He began to absorb the star power around him, and it quickly surged over. Obtained 3 billion experience points. 1 billion experience points. 2 billion experience points. His EXP kept rising, and the EXP he gained was quite insane. Compared to the EXP he gained in the Life Shrine, it was dozens of times more. No wonder it was said that this was an excellent place to cultivate. Cultivating here for a month was equivalent to a few years outside. Of course, in reality, he didn't stay here for a month. He speculated that from the consumption, it was far more than a month. It could be at least 2 to 3 months. Elder Go Huang had said that a month was for the outside world. It was different inside, and time passed more slowly. As for how long, it depended on the consumption of the jade pendant. If it was long, it might take a year and a half to use up. If it was fast, it would take more than a month. He maintained his cultivation state here, absorbing experience crazily. This was under the condition that he didn't use the crazy experience mode. If he used it, he would be able to obtain 1 to 200 billion experience points every time. With this speed, he would definitely be able to break through and level up faster. It seems like there's no pressure to break through to the 9 refinements Earth Lord. Like this, he sat in meditation and cultivated. It was quite good to be able to break through to the 9 refinements Earth Lord level here. As time passed, he crazily absorbed the experience here. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he finally heard a clear and melodious sound. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Tianyun for successfully breaking through to the 9 refinements Earth Lord level. Do you want to level up now? Not for now. Yi Tianyun wasn't in a hurry to level up. If he stayed on Divine Dream Island, how could he casually level up? No matter what, he had to leave here to level up. He immediately opened his eyes. The original scene was still reflected in his eyes. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven was still cultivating beside him. He wasn't in a hurry to leave. "I've been cultivating here for almost 2 weeks. Time really passes quickly." He took out the jade pendant. A small part of it had already been consumed. It seemed that it could last for a few more months. In just 2 weeks, he had successfully broken through to the 9 refinements Earthlord level. The effect was truly surprising. Following that, he didn't disturb the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. He turned around and flew out of Divine Dream Island. He planned to find a place to break through to the 9 refinements Earthlord level and complete his task. Not long after he left, the 3 cultivators on Divine Dream Island opened their eyes at the same time. They glanced at each other and could see a hint of ruthlessness in each other's eyes. Chapter 1103. After Yi Tianyun flew away, he quickly found a remote place to stop, and after a little look around, a strange smile appeared on his face. Level up. Then, he began to attract the heavenly tribulation. He believed that the heavenly tribulation he would encounter would not be the same as the one he saw in Divine Dream Island. If that was the case, he would have to attract it. This was the only way he could greatly reduce the effects here. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Tianyun for successfully breaking through to the 9th refinement Earthlord cultivation. Boom! At this time, the sky began to be covered with dark clouds. Countless bolts of divine thunder began to flash everywhere. However, it was not like in the image where there was divine thunder everywhere. There was only the terrifying divine thunder above his head. Under the interference of the heaven thief Divine Land, it began to be enraged. However, even if it was enraged, it did not seem to be a big problem. At most, it would be several times stronger than the 8th refinement Earthlord breakthrough. It was normal for it to be strengthened, but as long as it was not at the Divine Lord level, Yi Tianyun did not need to worry about it. When he was preparing to cross the tribulation, 3 figures suddenly appeared and surrounded him. They looked at him with sneering eyes. "Friend, we will give you 2 choices. Either you accept the strengthening effects of the divine thunder, or you throw out all your treasures. Choose for yourself." Hehe, this is the 9th refinement Earthlord breakthrough. If he succeeds, he will really become a super genius. Thinking back, I did not dare to break through to the 9th refinement Earthlord. The 8th refinement Earthlord is already terrifying, let alone the 9th refinement. That's right. If he dies, it will be a great loss. These 3 were the cultivators who first found the place where Yi Tianyun was crossing the tribulation. Now that they saw him moving alone, they immediately chased after him. Who knew that when they saw that Yi Tianyun was crossing the tribulation, they could take advantage of him. The 3 of them were Hu Hua Lord of Heaven, Hu Yu Lord of Heaven, and Hu Zeng Lord of Heaven. They were not brothers, but they had a good relationship. Their names were the same, indicating that they had a good relationship. Yi Tianyun ignored their threats. He knew from the start that someone was hiding nearby. He couldn't be bothered with them. Since they were here to give away experience, he naturally wouldn't mind. All 3 of them were geniuses. Although they weren't the best, they were still pretty good. After killing them, he would gain a lot of benefits. Throw all the treasures to you? Yi Tianyun smiled faintly. That's right. This is your only choice. Otherwise, if we interfere a little, how much do you think the power of your heavenly tribulation will increase? They moved closer to Yi Tianyun and said in a threatening tone. This kind of threat was usually effective, especially when the higher the cultivation, the more terrifying the power of the heavenly tribulation would be. The heavenly tribulation didn't care if the other party did it on purpose or not. As long as the person got close to the heavenly tribulation, the heavenly tribulation would be angered and its power would increase. In its opinion, it was here to help defend, so it would increase its power. Therefore, the person undergoing the tribulation must have a protector. Otherwise, it would be extremely easy for them to be threatened. The 3 people in front of him were a very simple and crude threat. Aren't you afraid of being punished by the heavenly spring god realm? Yi Tianyun looked at them indifferently, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. Kid, don't you know that talking like this will easily lead to a fatal disaster? Hu Hua, the Lord of Heaven's eyes were cold, and the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Yi Tianyun's words were indeed asking for death. If the other party didn't have the intention to kill him, his words would completely enrage them and they would kill him to silence him. Fatal disaster? Yi Tianyun looked at them and smiled faintly. Do you think I'm an idiot? If I really listen to you, I'll just die a little faster. You've been planning to kill me from the start. Otherwise, you'll definitely be severely punished if this matter is exposed. The choice they gave him was just to toy with Yi Tianyun before he died. How could they really let him go? Once he was exposed, he would be severely punished. The 5 god realms had already set the corresponding rules. They absolutely couldn't kill each other. Once discovered, they would be jointly punished by the other god realms. However, this kind of thing could only be said verbally. If they couldn't find out anything, they could only let it go. With so many geniuses here, it was impossible to kill the wrong person. That would be too severe, and no god realm would be willing to do that. As for soul-searching, it was not very possible. With their situation, they definitely wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. If something went wrong, who would compensate them? Looks like you're not stupid. Since you can see it, then there's no need to say anything more. Die. Before he finished speaking, Yi Tianyun pounced and flew directly towards them. He didn't care about the heavenly tribulation at all. After he rushed over, he scared them. They originally wanted to threaten him, but who knew that Yi Tianyun would directly kill him, ignoring the heavenly tribulation in the sky. You want the heavenly tribulation to become stronger, right? Then let's play something more exciting. Yi Tianyun quickly circulated the flying god technique. With a whoosh, his speed instantly increased. In the next moment, he killed his way to the weakest Lord of Heaven, Hu Yu. He grabbed him and directly flew above the heavenly tribulation. Lord of Heaven didn't even have time to react before he was already caught. As they ascended, the power of the heavenly tribulation suddenly increased, and thick divine thunder immediately struck down. Even a heaven monarch would have to retreat from such a terrifying power. Lord of Heaven wanted to struggle, but he was firmly held in place. The terrifying power made him feel how powerless his struggle was. Quickly let go of me. Lord of Heaven saw the terrifying divine lightning and was scared out of his wits. No problem, I'll let you go. Get up for me. Yi Tianyun suddenly kicked. With a dong sound, Lord of Heaven was directly kicked into the heavenly tribulation. With a boom sound, the divine lightning ruthlessly struck down and directly penetrated Hu Yu, Lord of Heaven's body. Heavenly Lord Hu Yu barely managed to block it, but his body was already charred black, and he seemed to have suffered some injuries. Following that, another strengthened divine lightning struck down from the sky and ruthlessly struck Yi Tianyun's body. However, it only left a smear of charred black on his body and then quickly disappeared. His recovery speed is quite astonishing. Lord of Heaven didn't even fall to the ground. Yi Tianyun tightly grabbed the divine spear and fiercely threw it. With a poochie sound, the spear pierced through the person in the sky. He coldly looked at them and said, "Don't you want to attract the heavenly tribulation? Come." The other two are still foolishly standing on the side. This series of actions is too fast, so fast that they didn't react. Their own brother was nailed in the air by Yi Tianyun, unable to move at all. He didn't die, but he was nailed in the air. If a few more divine lightning struck down, wouldn't he turn into charcoal? Chapter 1104. Yi Tianyun didn't give them a chance to recover. He swept the heavenly divine spear in his hand and cut Hu Yu, Lord of Heaven, in half. It was as easy as cutting a fragile piece of tofu. Ding! Successfully killed Hu Yu, Heavenly Lord. Reward, 870 billion EXP, 15 million crazy points, 5 million SPS. Reward, 10,000 killing technique, mid-grade reincarnation level martial art, broken teeth sword, high-grade reincarnation level weapon, ancient spirit necklace. Ding! Successfully killed Hu Yu, Lord of Heaven. Reward, 100 billion EXP, 10 million crazy points, 5 million proficiency. Reward, 1 lucky draw ticket. With the addition of 64 times experience points, he gained more than 800 billion experience points, which was really awesome. He had to admit that killing these experts was the fastest way to gain EXP, and he could also get a lot of treasures. It's just that there were no rare ones. If he could get a heavenly Tao martial art, it would be even better. Unfortunately, they didn't have this kind of heavenly Tao martial art. They did have a grade 2 divine domain heavenly Tao martial art, but they weren't qualified to practice it. Second brother. When the two of them saw heavenly monarch Huyu's corpse being dismembered, they immediately let out a blood-curdling scream. Anger immediately came out, and without hesitation, he rushed towards Yi Tianyun's side. They have always been acting together, but they didn't expect that this time, their brother was killed in a blink of an eye. I will kill you. Huyu Lord of Heaven roared and rushed towards Yi Tianyun with all his strength. The phantom of Kang Ming immediately appeared behind him. This phantom of Kang Ming was actually a giant python. Poisonous gas was quickly released from his body, causing the sky to turn pitch black. Heavenly Lord Hu Hua did the same. He unleashed his strongest power, wanting to avenge Heavenly Lord Huyu. But as soon as they came in, the heavenly tribulation struck them. They could only brace themselves to resist. Boom! The two of them were knocked back dozens of meters, and their bodies were charred black. The power of the heavenly tribulation against them was much stronger than against Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun withstood the heavenly tribulation and flew towards them. What? You want to rob us with that little ability of yours? Yi Tianyun sneered. The two of them were both shocked and angry. The divine lightning that triggered the heavenly tribulation was too strong. It was already good enough that they could withstand it. If it were any other ordinary Lord of Heaven, they would have been struck to death. In other words, if their cultivation was at the 5th layer of the Lord of Heaven, then the power of the divine lightning that struck down would at least be at the 6th or 7th layer of the Lord of Heaven. This was the punishment for the cultivators who had trespassed. Although it could make the heavenly tribulation stronger, it was also protecting the person undergoing the tribulation. In any case, the power of the heavenly tribulation that Yi Tianyun endured was much stronger, but overall, it was not as abnormal as theirs. Damn it, should we wait for him to finish his tribulation? Huseng Lord of Heaven quickly retreated, not daring to continue intruding into the heavenly tribulation. That's fine, let's let him successfully break through to the 9th layer of the Earth Monarch realm, then we'll make plans. Huseng Lord of Heaven could only brace himself and leave. After being struck by the divine lightning, they immediately sobered up, not daring to continue approaching. This was like a bucket of cold water being poured on their anger, temporarily cooling them down. No need to make plans, just follow me to the tribulation. Yi Tianyun laughed and pounced towards them, scaring them into running away. But how could their speed be faster than Yi Tianyun? Phoenix Bloodline, open. Flying God Art, open. Double speed was activated consecutively, and his speed directly exploded. He turned into a ray of light and swept over, instantly catching up to Huseng Lord of Heaven, scaring him to the point that his courage was about to explode. What kind of speed is this? He stuttered. This speed was really too terrifying, almost catching up in the blink of an eye. Didn't I say, how about staying and crossing the tribulation together? Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed, and he swung his fist fiercely. Huseng Lord of Heaven quickly waved his snake sword to block. Yi Tianyun completely ignored the snake sword, and still punched down. Sky-shaking God Art. Violent power superimposed on his fist, like a huge planet condensing on his fist, together with two kinds of martial arts that increased speed. Under the situation where the power was not weakened, it still had astonishing speed. Boom! Huseng Lord of Heaven's hand that was holding the snake sword trembled, and his palms were directly shattered by this violent power, and he was sent flying along with his sword. Boom! A big pit was formed on the ground. Third brother. Huseng Lord of Heaven was scared to death. He didn't expect that both of his brothers would be defeated. What the hell are you screaming for? Yi Tianyun sneered. It's too late to escape. In the next moment, he rushed forward with sky-shaking God Art, and in a flash, he arrived in front of Huseng Lord of Heaven, and slammed his body into Huseng Lord of Heaven. There was no fancy move, just a simple collision. Huseng Lord of Heaven directly collided with Huseng Lord of Heaven, and the violent power couldn't be stopped at all. The upgraded sky-shaking God Art is too terrifying. Coupled with flying God Art, it is like a huge flying planet. Who would dare to stop it? Ding! Successfully killed Huseng Lord of Heaven, gained 930 billion EXP, 20 million crazy points, 5 million SPS. At the same time, gained Meridian Snake Sword, high-grade reincarnation level weapon, 10,000 kill extinction, ancient spirit bracelet, low-grade reincarnation level. Ding, successfully killed Hussein Lord of Heaven, gained 100 billion EXP, 10 million crazy points, 5 million proficiency, and a lottery ticket. A series of sounds popped up, letting him gain a lot of experience, but he is still far away from leveling up. I'm really sorry, I didn't expect it to be so powerful, it exploded with just one hit. Yi Tianyun spread his hands helplessly, he thought that at most he would be seriously injured, who knew that he would turn into a blood mist with just one hit. The sky-shaking god Art's power is certainly enhanced, plus their physique is not as strong as Yi Tianyun. Immediately, he turned his gaze to Hussein Lord of Heaven. Hussein Lord of Heaven was lucky, he used the Meridian Snake Sword to resist his attack, otherwise he would really be blown into a blood mist by the punch. Of course, the situation is not much better now, the Meridian Snake Sword seems to be embedded in his body, he looks like he is dying. The violent fist directly punched the weapon into his body, almost piercing through it. How could he not be on the verge of death? Boom. Then, a bolt of divine lightning struck down and ruthlessly struck him to death. Ding, successfully killed Hussein Lord of Heaven, gained Ding, successfully completed a realm jumping kill, gained. Chapter 1105. The three Lords of Heaven had been easily killed by Yi Tianyun, as if he were drinking water. They were all geniuses, but how could they be his match when Yi Tianyun's strength had increased so much? They were all geniuses, but not every genius had a terrifying awakening ability like Sir God Yu Qin. Thus, dealing with them wasn't difficult at all. In particular, when combined with the heaven-shaking divine art and heaven-soaring divine art, the strength of these two divine arts directly exploded. This was a nearly overwhelming victory, directly crushing the opponent's strength. It could even be said that this was the might of a 9 refined Earth Lord. After breaking through to the 9 refined Earth Lord realm, his strength had increased by a great deal. It could be said that his strength was several times that of an 8 refined Earth Lord. This was truly an existence on a different level. No wonder it was said that a 9 refined Earth Lord was a true Earth Lord. I'll break this heavenly tribulation first. Yi Tianyun looked up at the heavenly tribulation and quickly flew up. He revolved the soaring heavenly god art and combined it with the heaven-shaking divine art to scatter the heavenly tribulation. After breaking this heavenly tribulation, a rich star power began to descend from the heavens, blessing his body and strengthening the planet within him. He sat there meditating to recover, feeling the astonishing energy. This is the feeling of a 9 refined Earth Lord, it's really good. Yi Tianyun felt his entire body relax. As he was about to finish, he heard a loud shout from the side. You actually killed our 3 senior apprentice brothers. Then, 2 cultivators flew over. As they saw the blood and corpses strewn all over the ground, they were immediately enraged. From this familiar aura, they were undoubtedly their fellow apprentice brothers. Soon after, other cultivators flew over. The fluctuations of tribulation here had clearly been sensed by the cultivators of Divine Dream Island, thus they all flew over. Even the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven flew over. As he saw the situation, his complexion changed. Junior apprentice brother Tianyun, you are too reckless. Even if we really want to do it, we can't do it here. We have to do it in a remote place. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head and smiled bitterly. If he was discovered, Yi Tianyun would be punished. Yi Tianyun was from the same sect as him, so he would definitely side with his own people. As for the cultivators from the other god territories, how they died had nothing to do with him. The other cultivators flew over. When they saw this scene, they all revealed gloating expressions. They were all witnesses to this scene. I did kill 3 of you. That's right. Yi Tianyun stood up and readily agreed. At the same time, he retrieved the spoils of war from the corpses. Among them was the jade pendant. With the 3 jade pendants, he could stay here for a longer period of time. When the time came, he would have someone send him a message. Then, Elder Go Huang wouldn't stay outside for too long. As the other cultivators heard Yi Tianyun's straightforward reply, they couldn't help but be stunned. Then, they angrily cursed, "Put down your things." It seems you're here to rob us. How could your heavenly spring divine realm have such a disciple? Do you want to destroy the relationship between the god territories? Once this accusation was placed on them, no one would be able to bear it. Yi Tianyun faintly looked at him and coldly sneered, "Destroy the relationship between the god territories? Then let's see who broke the rules first." As he finished speaking, he threw out a recording disc. Then, the previous conversation fell into the eyes of many cultivators. "I'll give you two choices. Either hand over all your treasures, or we approach and increase the power of this heavenly tribulation. You obviously want to kill me to silence me. Don't take me for a fool." All sorts of images and sounds appeared in front of everyone. Yi Tianyun wasn't a fool. He knew how serious the situation was. From the beginning, he had used the recording disc to record everything. As long as he could prove that the other party had threatened him first, everything would be fine. As soon as the recording was shown, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven rushed over and angrily cursed, "All right, you're the ones who really destroyed the relationship between the god territories. I didn't expect you to threaten my junior brother to pass the heavenly tribulation. If my junior brother wasn't stronger, he would have been struck to death by the heavenly tribulation." The sudden reversal made the other party speechless. They were suppressed by the recording disc and had no power to refute. When the others saw this, they shook their heads. They didn't expect that Yi Tianyun would still have a trick up his sleeve. This time, the one who would be punished was not Yi Tianyun, but the other party. Not bad. To pass the heavenly tribulation, you really spent a lot of effort. I'll explain it to Elder Go Huang. When the time comes, I'll hold your god territory accountable, Yi Tianyun said coldly. He didn't believe that these people didn't know that the Lord of Heaven and the others had done this. They must have known about it. Now that they failed, they became angry out of shame. Now that he had the recording disc, he didn't need to explain too much. The recording was the simplest and crudest explanation. This is all because they acted without permission and violated the rules. This has nothing to do with our god territory. We'll mention this matter to the elder. When the time comes, we'll properly discuss this matter. The other party's tone immediately weakened. Anger flashed in the depths of his eyes. He didn't expect that everything would be in vain, and he would die in vain. "All right, when the time comes, I hope you can give a reasonable explanation," Yi Tianyun snorted coldly. Then, he flew to the side of the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and said with a smile, "Senior brother purple-crowned, let's go." The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven nodded and left with his people, leaving the group of people looking at each other in dismay. This was really bitterness that couldn't be expressed. Instead, it caused a lot of trouble. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven gave a thumbs up and praised, "Junior brother Tianyun, you're really amazing. You even know to use the recording disc. Otherwise, it would really be impossible to wash away. This definitely has to be recorded. Otherwise, it would really be a big problem. With such a big commotion, if the other party were to accuse me, I really wouldn't be able to bear it." Yi Tianyun smiled. He already knew how to do this. No matter what he said, it couldn't compare to the recording disc. Although the recording could be faked, there were no conditions to fake it here. Therefore, it wouldn't be considered fake. Right, I almost forgot to congratulate junior brother Tianyun. You've broken through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch level. That's really amazing. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head and said, "At most, I'll break through to the 8 refinements Earth Monarch level. Then, I'll break through to the Lord of Heaven. Otherwise, I'll definitely fail. This way, you'll become one of the few disciples in the heavenly spring divine realm who broke through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch level." How many people in the heavenly spring divine realm have broken through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch level? Yi Tianyun asked. There won't be more than 10. You can imagine how heaven-defying you are, right? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said enviously, "In the future, you'll definitely be heavily nurtured. However, I have to remind you that you must become strong enough. Otherwise, when you break through to the Lord of Heaven level, you might die here." Chapter 1106. 8 Refinement Earth Lord breaking through to Lord of Heaven would be like dying, let alone 9 Refinement Earth Lord breaking through to Lord of Heaven. The further one breaks through, the more difficult it is to break through. It's not that Purple Crown Lord of Heaven doesn't have the confidence to break through to 9 Refinement Earth Lord, but he doesn't have the confidence to break through to Lord of Heaven. Without the confidence to break through to Lord of Heaven, everything is nonsense. I know this, I must improve myself to break through. Yi Tianyun thought of the scene in Divine Dream Island. Is he really facing the heavenly tribulation to break through to Lord of Heaven? If that's the case, he really needs to improve himself, otherwise he will die. But breaking through to Lord of Heaven, he will have to face an attack comparable to Divine Monarch level. Isn't this a bit too much? At that time, he can only resist, he can't be as domineering as he is now, he can't destroy the heavenly tribulation with one punch. It's already good enough to resist the attack of Divine Monarch level, how can he destroy it with one punch? If he provokes the heavenly tribulation, it will release a stronger attack of Divine Monarch level, it will be absolutely fatal. Ding! Completed main quest breakthrough to 9 Refinement Earthlord, obtained 500 million crazy points, 500 million SPS, 500 million mastery. Ding! Successfully accepted main quest breakthrough to 10 Refinement Earthlord or Lord of Heaven level. Breakthrough to 10 Refinement Earthlord, obtained 1 billion crazy points, 1 billion SPS, 1 billion mastery. At the same time, obtained the title Eternal First Earth Monarch, broke through to Heavenly Monarch Realm, gained 500 million crazy points, 500 million SPS, 500 million mastery. Choose one of the 2 main quests, you can choose to break through at will. What? When Yi Tianyun saw the new main quest, he was dumbfounded. It's not that there are 2 main quests, but a new word appeared, 10 Refinement Earth Lord. 10 Refinement Earth Lord, isn't it only 9 refinement? How did a 10th refinement appear out of nowhere? He was extremely shocked. Junior brother Tianyun, what's wrong? When the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven saw Yi Tianyun suddenly shout out, he felt somewhat baffled. Senior brother Purple Crown, I wonder if there's a saying about the 10 refinements of Earth Monarch? Yi Tianyun calmed down, looked at him, and asked. 10 refinement Earth Monarch? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven immediately laughed and denied, I've never heard of such a saying. 9 refinements is the limit. There's no such thing as 10 refinements. Do you think that the other levels all have 10 levels, and that all Earth Monarchs have 10 refinements? That's right. Yi Tianyun nodded. There's no such thing. The 9th refinement is the limit. I've never heard of the 10th refinement. If there really is a 10 refinements Earth Monarch, wouldn't it explode the heavens? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven smiled and said, it's fine. I thought about it a long time ago, but later I realized that there was no such theory. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven denied it without hesitation, believing that there was no 10 refinements Earth Monarch. Of course, Yi Tianyun wouldn't say that there was really a 10 refinements Earth Monarch. The system wouldn't lie. Since it gave this condition, then it definitely existed. There was absolutely no way it could be fake. 10 refinements Earth Monarch, Yi Tianyun's eyes flickered. If he succeeded, then he would obtain an additional special title, number 1 Earth Monarch of all time. The effect of this title was absolutely powerful. He didn't know what additional effects it would have, but he would only know after he obtained it. However, would there be any special conditions needed to break through to the 10 refinements Earth Monarch? When he checked, there were indeed special conditions superimposed on it. 10 refinements Earth Monarch. The basic condition for breaking through is to condense a second planet in the body and circulate it. At the same time, the 2 of them need to share star power and reach a mutually supportive state. Otherwise, it will be judged as a failure. Note: requires a planet with a core. When he saw this condition, he frowned. Still need to condense a planet? This difficulty wasn't just a little high, especially when there were 2 planets. It was easy to cause problems. The most important thing was that there needed to be a core. It wasn't just a simple stone, but a planet with a core. Either he condensed his own core, or he dug it up and put it in. It had to be said that the difficulty was quite high. The main thing was whether or not he could condense a second planet with a core. Furthermore, they couldn't collide with each other, otherwise even he would die. The difficulty is really high. Yi Tianyun shook his head. No wonder no one had succeeded in so many years. The conditions were so harsh. How could anyone succeed? Otherwise, there wouldn't be this strange title of #1 Earth Monarch of all time. What a domineering title. This was the first person to reach the 10 refinements Earth Monarch level since time immemorial. It seemed that it really was like the other levels. There were still 10 levels, but it was too difficult, so people didn't think there was a 10 refinements. Or perhaps it was impossible, so no one succeeded. As time passed and no one succeeded, they would naturally deny the 10 refinements Earth Monarch level. Although the difficulty is high, if there isn't any difficulty, then how can it be challenging? Yi Tianyun roughly knew what the Divine Dream Island was, and what he dreamt of. It might be the heavenly tribulation of a 10 refinements Earth Monarch, or the heavenly tribulation that a 10 refinements Earth Monarch would encounter when breaking through to the level of the Lord of Heaven. This might even be a hint given by Divine Dream Island. A 10 refinements Earth Monarch, the #1 Earth Monarch of all time, would the heavens allow him to break through to the Lord of Heaven? Thus, the most terrifying divine thunder would descend. Whether or not one could resist, it all depended on one's own ability. Then, he flew forwards with the Purple Crown Lord of Heaven. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven didn't bring him back to Divine Dream Island, but directly brought him forwards. Let's meet up with the other disciples. That place is the best place to cultivate in the Heaven Thief Godland. You have just made a successful breakthrough, so you must go there to consolidate your foundations. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven enviously said, "You also obtained 3 jade pendants. You can stay here for a while longer." Senior Apprentice Brother Purple Crown, how much time do you have left? Yi Tianyun asked. It won't be long. At most I will have less than 10 days before I leave this place. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven smiled. How about this? I'll give you this jade pendant. Yi Tianyun selected one and handed it to the Purple Crown Lord of Heaven. If he obtained 3 jade pendants, he would be able to stay here for a longer period of time. The truth was that he didn't need to stay here for that long. Moreover, he felt that the Purple Crown Lord of Heaven was a good person. If he was given the least amount of time, it would be fine. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven quickly declined. Junior Apprentice Brother Tianyun, you absolutely cannot do that. You have just broken through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch realm, so you need to consolidate your cultivation. Let me tell you clearly, when a 9 refinements Earth Monarch breaks through to the Lord of Heaven, there is only a slim chance of survival. Don't think that you are enough. The truth is that nothing is enough. His eyes were filled with determination. He was determined not to take the jade pendant that Yi Tianyun gave him. Instead, he was extremely concerned about him. Chapter 1107. Yi Tianyun was moved by the words of the Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven. If it were anyone else, they definitely wouldn't have been polite with him and would have taken it first. It was simply far too difficult to enter this place. If one could stay a little longer, they would definitely do so. In particular, even though Yi Tianyun still had 3 jade pendants, the Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven still chose to give up. This action left Yi Tianyun feeling a bit of admiration. There were very few people that could refuse like this. This proved that the Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven was truly considerate of him. Senior Apprentice Brother Purple-Crowned, I have 3 jade pendants. I'll choose one less for you. It looks like you've already reached a bottleneck. I don't know when you'll be able to come here again. You don't need to be polite with me. You said that once I break through to the 9th refined Earthlord realm, the elders will definitely vigorously train me. At that time, they will definitely give me more resources. It might not be too long before I can come here again. Yi Tianyun insisted on giving the Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven the jade pendant. The Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven was a good person, especially now that he had reached a bottleneck. This could be considered as giving him a favor. If he hadn't reached a bottleneck, then he wouldn't have stayed at Divine Dream Island for such a long time. He wanted to meditate and see if he could break through this bottleneck. Hearing Yi Tianyun say this, the Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven hesitated a bit. He clenched his teeth and said, "Then I owe Junior Apprentice Brother Tianyun a favor. I have indeed encountered a bottleneck recently and I haven't been able to break through it. If Junior Apprentice Brother Tianyun has any problems in the future, feel free to look for me at Sword Palace. I will definitely help you." Yi Tianyun certainly believed his words. At the very least, his favorable impression of him wouldn't be fake. When he looked at others, he looked at their favorable impression. If they had a low favorable impression of him, then that would be a lie. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven was obviously not one of them. Thus, he was worthy of being friends with. When the time comes, I'll have to trouble senior apprentice brother Purple Crown. Yi Tianyun smiled. Then, he handed over one of the jade pendants. After the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven received it, he carefully put it away. This was a hard-won opportunity for him, so he naturally had to be careful. Now, I can have another month to cultivate. Thank you so much. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven had just checked the jade pendant and found that it could be used for at least another month, which was quite a long time. The other 2 jade pendants were about the same. The 3 of them had entered at the same time, so they had arrived at about the same time. Under the guidance of the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven, they soon arrived at their destination, the path of the Celestial Lord. The Celestial Immortal Path was actually a long passageway. As far as the eye could see, it was a long passageway that wound all the way up to the top of a mountain range. When they arrived, Yi Tianyun saw many cultivators sitting cross-legged on the passageway. To put it bluntly, they were sitting on the side of the main road. This path was very strange. There were no trees around it, not even spirit herbs. It was a very empty passageway. Only a few thousand meters away from the passageway were there all sorts of spirit trees and spirit flowers. Here, the passageway was bare, including the one leading to the top of the mountain. It was all bare. In fact, even that mountain was completely barren. It was extremely ugly to look at. However, this passageway attracted most of the cultivators who came here. All of them were sitting cross-legged there to cultivate. Yi Tianyun glanced over and saw that there were more than 100 people. These were all super geniuses from the 5 divine realms. Each of them had been nurtured at a great cost. Just the hundreds of people here alone would consume hundreds of jade pendants. The price was basically equivalent to consuming hundreds of heaven-level treasures. It was really extravagant. This was only one batch. After all, as time passed, another batch of people would be sent in. At that time, the consumption would be even more shocking. No matter how talented a cultivator was, without amazing resources, there was no way to stack up. There are really a lot of strong people. Some of them are even at the 8th or 9th level of the Lord of Heaven. It seems that they are going to break through to the Divine Lord realm. Yi Tianyun nodded. Breaking through to the Divine Lord realm wasn't a big problem here. After all, the star power here was much stronger than outside. If one couldn't break through here, then there was no need to talk about the outside. This is the Celestial Immortal Path, the best place to cultivate in the heaven-pilfering sacred land. Don't be fooled by its bare appearance. It's actually the best place to absorb star power. It's not like other places, where the rejection is stronger, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven explained. Why doesn't anyone climb up the Celestial Immortal Path? Yi Tianyun saw scattered people meditating along the way. However, the higher the mountain, the fewer people there were. At the very top, there was no one there at all. Because no one can climb up, so no one. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head and said, "In the legends of the Celestial Immortal Path, whoever can climb to the highest peak can become a Celestial Immortal." Celestial Immortal. Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. A heavenly master's cultivation was stronger than a divine monarch's, which meant that they were the top experts in the 3rd grade god domain. As a domain lord, Yi Tianyun felt no pressure at all. Climbing up and you can become a celestial immortal? Isn't that a bit too exaggerated? Yi Tianyun was puzzled. This is indeed a bit exaggerated, but if you really climb up, your chances of breaking through to become a celestial immortal in the future are not low. At the very least, your chances are much higher than most divine lords. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shrugged and said, "Anyway, I don't have to think too much about it. Right now, we don't even have the 8 characters of a divine lord, let alone a celestial immortal. That's a godlike existence." Yi Tianyun nodded. This explanation was more reasonable. If reaching the peak really meant becoming a celestial immortal, then it was too exaggerated. There was only one possibility, and that was that after climbing up, one would have a celestial immortal comprehension, which would be of great help to breaking through in the future. This explanation was more reasonable. If someone said that climbing up meant becoming a celestial immortal, he would not believe it. Although the difficulty is quite high, many people still try to climb up. Yi Tianyun saw many of them moving forward step by step. A group of Lord of Heaven powerhouses climbing up the mountain was really hilarious. Isn't that for sure? Coming here, one must try the celestial immortal path. Otherwise, coming here would be a waste. Moreover, this is the best place to cultivate. Cultivation is the main thing, and climbing up is incidental. There is no conflict between the two. Following that, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven flew down with him, and soon landed at the beginning of the path. Junior brother Tianyun, you can start from here. Under normal circumstances, as long as you walk past a place, you can directly fly over it. There is no need to walk again, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said. So, you don't have to worry about leaving this place. Or, the next time you come, you will have to come back again, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said. Chapter 1108. In many similar situations, one could only start from the beginning. One could not leave from the beginning and stay in the same place the next time they came back. This was how the path of the heavenly sovereign worked. If one could climb to the top of the mountain, one could fly over the next time instead of walking in from the beginning. This would undoubtedly save a lot of time. The key was that the concentration of astral power was completely different. It's indeed more humane. Junior brother Tianyun, stay here for now. I'll go over first and wait for you to catch up. I believe that with your standard, you'll be able to catch up in no time. If there's any problem, just call me. After the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven explained to him, he flew forward. It was obvious that he had been here before. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven was quite talented. It was normal that it was not his first time here. It was impossible for him to go up with Yi Tianyun again. It would undoubtedly be a waste of time. Moreover, although the path was far, it was within sight. There was no need to worry that someone would disturb Yi Tianyun. If someone were to disturb Yi Tianyun, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven would see it immediately. Hence, there was no need to go so close. After the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven left, Yi Tianyun turned his attention to the path of the Heavenly Sovereign. This name was really domineering. The path of the Heavenly Sovereign, since it could be called that, there must be a meaning behind it. Becoming a Heavenly Sovereign, Yi Tianyun lifted his foot and walked towards the path of the Heavenly Sovereign. As soon as his foot touched the ground, he immediately felt a stream of thoughts gushing into his head. This was not a martial arts secret manual. It was a kind of artistic conception. In an instant, he felt that he had fallen into an artistic conception. The next moment, he felt that he was in another world. He had transformed into a small farmer, farming and feeling the hardships of labor. However, Yi Tianyun calmed his mind and quickly woke up from this artistic conception. He felt that he had been here for a few years. In reality, it was not that long. In reality, he had only stayed for a short while. The most important thing was that he did not move. This was the most important thing. He did not take a single step forward. He was directly frozen in place. So that's how it is. An illusion test. Yi Tianyun's heart settled, and he immediately realized the problem with the Tao of the Celestial. He had to experience these illusions. It was just that this illusion was so real that he could really feel the hardships of the farmers. Fortunately, in the process of experience, the astral power around him kept surging in and turning into experience points. He found that the astral power here was indeed very dense, much denser than the astral power outside, so it was easier to absorb. The key was that he would be trapped in this illusion for a long time. By the time he woke up, the protective effect of the jade pendant would be gone. At that time, he would really die here. Thus, he needed someone to pull him back. Otherwise, he would definitely continue to fall into this illusion. However, it was just the beginning, so the difficulty wasn't that great. That was why the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven didn't come over to protect him, and he didn't explain it too clearly either. Everyone's situation was different, so there was no point in explaining it too clearly. After he calmed himself down, he continued to walk forward step by step. Because his mind was very calm, He did not feel any pressure at all, let alone falling into the illusion. As he kept walking forward, Yi Tianyun was surprised to find that the absorption effect was getting better and better. This was similar to the holy hall of life. The closer he was to the core, the better the effect was. It was the same here. The closer he was to the front, the more amazing the effect was, and the more experience he gained. As he walked forward quickly, he soon caught up with the new cultivators and continued to chase after the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. The entire celestial path was quite far, at least 100 miles away. Normally, if he flew, he would be able to reach it in an instant. However, it was different now. He walked forward step by step, and his speed would slow down. Of course, Yi Tianyun just ran. He started to run forward continuously. When the crowd saw this, they looked at him as if he was an idiot. Is this kid crazy? If he were to rush into a special illusion in one go and accidentally get stuck inside, it would be troublesome. He seems to be from the heavenly spring divine realm. Are the geniuses from the heavenly spring divine realm also arrogant? Forget it. Let them do what they want. They will die anyway. One by one, the cultivators shook their heads. They felt that Yi Tianyun was crazy. Others walked step by step. At most, they would walk a little faster. They had never seen anyone running. Even the more arrogant geniuses would choose to climb step by step instead of rushing forward in one breath. That would bring about a huge negative effect. It would make the illusion effect of the celestial path accumulate. It seemed stable and could withstand the illusion. However, once one ran too far, the effect would be even stronger. To put it bluntly, every step would cause an illusion. It could be said that one step was a different world, and no one could escape. At most, they would enter the illusion when it accumulated to a certain extent. Then, they would break out of the illusion. The further they went, the more shocking the illusion would be. If they accumulated for a long distance, once they stepped into the illusion, they might not even be able to wake up. It would be fine if it was the same as the outside world. The problem was that once the jade was used up, they would die. They would be completely devoured by the heavenly pilfering divine realm. It's over. I didn't explain it clearly to him. He can't run so far in one breath. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven's heart jumped when he saw Yi Tianyun rushing over. He knew that he was in trouble. Just as he was about to stop him, Yi Tianyun suddenly stopped. It was obvious that he had entered the illusion. He ran a few miles in one breath. That's too fierce. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven took a deep breath. He estimated that Yi Tianyun was facing a terrifying illusion. Generally, after falling into the illusion, one could forcefully break it. That was to carry the person away. Then, they would be able to leave the illusion. However, if they used external forces, they would have to start all over again. Therefore, if someone launched a sneak attack, it would be considered a failure. Of course, with so many people watching, who would launch a sneak attack? Unless they didn't want to stay here anymore. It was clearly stated that they couldn't attack each other. If someone did so and was seen by so many people, they wouldn't even know how they died. The 5 divine realms were aware of the problem here. That was why they made all sorts of rules to not attack each other. It was beneficial to everyone. Haha, that kid has fallen into the illusion. He has already run a few miles. With such an astonishing distance, it will take him at least a month. At that time, even his protective barrier will be gone. Hihi, I think it will take even longer. It seems that this journey was wasted. What a waste. It's better to leave this time for me. I can walk up step by step. It's worth it. They all thought that Yi Tianyun was a fool and that he was wasting his jade pendants. They thought that it would take a long time for Yi Tianyun to wake up from the illusion, but the next moment, he suddenly opened his eyes and continued to run forward as fast as he could. Chapter 1109. It stood to reason that if one gathered so many illusions in one go and then fell into them, it would take a long time before they could break free. After all, after accumulating so many illusions, the difficulty would greatly increase. This wasn't the accumulation of many small illusions, but a direct increase in difficulty. Otherwise, they would have already started running instead of walking slowly. At most, they would walk a short distance and then stop, deliberately letting themselves fall into the illusions. This was the same as entering the accumulated illusions. After breaking them, it was the same as solving a small problem. This method was followed by many people. It was currently the safest method. If they ran like crazy, they would at most run a short distance, unlike Yi Tianyun who ran several miles. This distance was too far. Once they burst out, they would wait until the jade pendant's protective shield disappeared and they might not be able to break it. This time was too long, so no one was willing to do this. It was just too dangerous. When Yi Tianyun did this, he would be ridiculed. But who knew that when he broke it in seconds, everyone would be shocked, wondering if they were seeing things. It hasn't even been a few seconds, and it's already been broken? This is too exaggerated. I wonder if he didn't enter the illusions and just stopped to rest. Impossible, he must have entered the illusions. His aura fluctuations just now were different. Once someone enters the illusions, their aura will calm down, as if they were dead. If that's the case, then did he really break it in an instant? How did he do this? Everyone was dumbfounded. They all wanted to see Yi Tianyun become a joke and be moved away. Who knew that nothing would happen to him, and he would even break it in seconds? This left them all stunned. Yi Tianyun ignored their gazes and continued to rush forward. It was undeniable that the illusions here were very strong. But for him, these illusions were still within the range of what he could withstand. With his powerful spiritual force, he could directly break through any illusions. This was his spiritual force. It far surpassed the existence of others at the same level. Don't forget, he was also a powerful divine carver master. His spiritual force was definitely much stronger than others. In addition to his outstanding willpower, how could this small illusion stop him? Continue. Yi Tianyun sprinted all the way up and continued to crazily throw out a few more miles. Then, under the astonished gazes of the crowd, he directly stopped where he was and entered the illusion. At this time, the crowd started discussing again, guessing how long it would take for Yi Tianyun to wake up this time. No one thought that Yi Tianyun would be able to wake up instantly. After all, the further he went, the more terrifying the difficulty would be. It was impossible for him to wake up instantly like before. It didn't take long for Yi Tianyun to wake up. Although it was a little slower than before, the difference between the two was not that big. In less than half a minute, he would be able to break it. In theory, it was still an instant kill. The group of people was dumbfounded. The result was still the same. At most, they would be a little slower than before. They would not stay for a few days or even a month. Following that, Yi Tianyun continued to rush forward, chasing after the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven was still quite far away. It was roughly more than 30 miles. He had already walked almost half the distance. No one knew how long it took for him to walk more than 30 miles. At least for now, it seemed that catching up with him was not a problem. Junior brother Tianyun, you really caught up with me so quickly. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head. What he said before was all encouraging words. He knew that Yi Tianyun needed to move forward slowly. If he wanted to catch up, it would take a long time. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, he would close the distance by almost 10 miles. If he continued like this, he would really catch up soon. It had to be known that he had spent a full 2 months to get here. His progress was relatively fast. Who knew that Yi Tianyun would catch up with him by almost 1/3 of the distance in a single breath? It was really a blow to him. The others looked at Yi Tianyun. They didn't know where this freak had come from. How could he be so monstrous? The others from the heavenly spring divine realm were even more shocked. When did they have such a monstrous fellow disciple? The key was that he was a human. He could tell with one glance that he was a human, and he was an existence that could suppress everyone present. Yi Tianyun didn't care about anything. He just kept running. Every time, he would run 2 to 3 miles, then stop to break the barrier. Then, he would continue to chase after him. Every time he broke the barrier, it would take a little longer than the last. However, the time was very short. It was only a few minutes, so it could be said that it was very short. At least, to them, it was really short. It should be known that when they walked this path before, even if it was a few hundred meters, it would still take them a few hours. Yi Tianyun only needed a few minutes to cover the distance of 2 to 3 miles. This difference made them want to vomit blood. To be able to enter this place, they were all super geniuses. However, compared to Yi Tianyun, they felt like a pile of *T. They couldn't be compared at all. How long has it been? He has already crossed more than 10 miles. Isn't he too fast? That's right. His speed can be compared to that Lord of Heaven. Let's not talk about that Lord of Heaven. He is really heaven-defying. He seems to be a 2nd or 3rd grade divine carver, right? It's really enviable. The heavenly cleansing divine realm has such a genius. I wonder how they trained him. They couldn't help but think of another genius who was so heaven-defying. Just like Yi Tianyun, he had broken the barrier in seconds. He was even faster than Yi Tianyun. However, he wasn't here for the time being. Thus, Yi Tianyun's limelight had been stolen. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Tianyun quickly rushed forward and soon caught up to the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven didn't move. He stayed in place and waited for Yi Tianyun to catch up. He wanted to see how long it would take for Yi Tianyun to catch up to him. It took less than a quarter of an hour. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven revealed a bitter smile. This was too fast. Senior apprentice brother Purple Crown, I've caught up. Yi Tianyun arrived at the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven's side and smiled. Hey, junior apprentice brother Tianyun, aren't you too heaven-defying? How did you do it? How did you break such a powerful illusion so easily? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven asked. This is to use mental strength. Once you use it, the illusion will be shattered. Yi Tianyun shrugged his shoulders and said, it's just that I spent more and more time. I've let senior apprentice brother Purple Crown see a joke. Chapter 11:10. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven didn't know what to say. Instead, he felt a little depressed. Why was there such a big gap between humans? Is this our fellow disciple? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven looked Yi Tianyun up and down and said in surprise, a human with such abilities is really amazing. You are the first human I've seen so valiant. I've seen many humans before, but their talents were quite poor. Ahem, you who are Lord of Heaven, watch your words. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven knew the situation. If it was his own race being said like this, he would also feel unhappy. Thus, he hurriedly reminded his companion. I'm not wrong. Humans are indeed not generally of low status. Of course, I'm not discriminating against humans. I don't discriminate against any race. What I hate the most are those who are gluttonous and lazy. Their talents are obviously terrible, but they're not willing to work hard. Humans are the most hardworking race I've seen. It's just that their talents are too poor. It's very difficult to make up for it with just hard work. However, I'm still very impressed. It's just that their status is generally low. Their cultivation is too low, so their status can only be so. It's too difficult to change the status quo. You who are Lord of Heaven seemed to have opened a chatterbox. He started to speak non-stop, completely ignoring the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven's words. This. Junior brother Tianyun, you who are Lord of Heaven is like this. Sometimes, he likes to say such things. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven felt very embarrassed. It's fine. What senior brother Yu Hua said is the truth. Humans are generally too low in talent. They can only rely on hard work to make up for it. Yi Tianyun looked at the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. What the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said was not wrong. Moreover, there was no discrimination in Yu Hua Lord of Heaven's words. That's what you say, but there are still many bright spots. I've seen 3 human powerhouses before. Their talents are a bit poor. However, they worked together and showed great strength. The human race's ability to learn was still very strong. Of course, the most important thing is that there are many of them. Which divine realm doesn't have humans? Yu Hua, the Lord of Heaven, seemed to recall the past and smiled. 3 powerful human warriors? Yi Tianyun narrowed his eyes and asked, Senior Martial Brother Yu Hua, what are their names? The 3 of them moving together reminded him of the heaven-creating Divine King and the others. Maybe it was them. He had been out for so long, but he had not heard any news about them. It would be difficult to find them in the sea of people. Of course, one of them is the Lord of Heaven and Earth, the other is the Lord of Ancient Ming, and the last one is the Lord of Heaven and Earth. I even befriended them and drank with them. Their abilities are pretty good. Their cultivations are all at the 5th or 6th refinement level. It's really not easy for humans to reach such a level, said Earth Lord Yuhua with a smile. As expected. 2 beams of bright light shot out from Yi Tianyun's eyes as he stared at Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, and said, Senior Marshal Brother Yuhua, where did they go? Or did they say anything? I don't know. They said they wanted to wander around in the 2nd grade divine realms to see who would take them in. You know the situation in the 2nd grade divine realms. It's too difficult to take them in as disciples. If their talent is not up to standard, no one will take them in. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, shook his head and said, I don't know if they have joined any divine realms. It's not a good thing to be a lone cultivator. How many years ago was this? Yi Tianyun asked hurriedly. Not long ago, probably a few years ago. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, thought for a moment, then smiled and said, Do you know each other? Yes, they are from the same hometown as me. Yi Tianyun was very grateful for the information from Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven. At least, it proved that the 3 of them were still alive. No wonder they are so hard-working and cultivate with all their might. This is the first time I have seen people cultivate so hard. It feels like they are doing it for some purpose. They are not willing to tell me even when I ask them. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, shook his head and smiled. But never mind, we met by chance. It's not good for me to interfere with their situation. Yi Tianyun nodded and clenched his fists. What else could they be after cultivating so hard? It must be to make himself stronger quickly so that he can return to the 3 realms to protect everyone. Little did they know, he had already solved the problem, at least for the time being. Where did they last appear? Yi Tianyun asked. I remember it very clearly. It is in the 3 divine realms. It is a concentration camp for lone cultivators. Most lone cultivators go there. Sometimes, other divine realms recruit disciples there, Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven said. Thank you, Senior Brother Yuhua, for the information. Yi Tianyun had already made up his mind. After he left, he would go and find their whereabouts. This was a pleasant surprise. He did not expect to ask about them here. They had contributed so much to the 3 realms. It was good enough that they were safe. Could it be that junior brother Tianyun wants to find them? Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven asked. Yes, after this is over, I will go and find them, Yi Tianyun said straightforwardly. Then I wish you good luck. The 3 divine realms are very big. They might not even be there anymore. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, shook his head and said, however, it is rare to see a human as strong as you. Let me tell you something else. The heavenly spring divine realm is very restless now. Be careful. Thank you. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, was able to do this because of the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. Both of them did not discriminate against other races, and they did not discriminate against the weak either. They were able to treat each other calmly. Immediately, Yi Tianyun said goodbye to them and continued to run forward. He won't stay here with them, he will move forward step by step, he is still running. Do you think junior brother Tianyun will reach the end of the Celestial Lord path? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven asked. If he can maintain it, it should not be a problem. However, that is, Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, said enviously. Heavenly Lord Yuhua said enviously, I don't know how he cultivates. He is the weakest human, but he can suppress everyone. I am not sure about this. However, it proves that even the weakest race has a chance to make a comeback, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said with a smile. Yes, we also have to work hard, senior brother. The 2 of them looked at each other. Determination could be seen in each other's eyes. They were also carrying some kind of responsibility. Everyone had different responsibilities. Many people looked glamorous on the outside, but in reality, they were working very hard. Every cultivator here had a lot of responsibilities on their shoulders. However, everyone's situation was different. Yi Tianyun's responsibility was to protect the 3 realms. Everything was so simple. Apart from that, everything else was empty. The Celestial Lord Path. Chapter 11:11. Yi Tianyun continued to frantically rush up. He basically rushed forward for 2 to 3 miles. This distance was maintained, and it didn't take long for him to break through the illusion. The difficulty wasn't too high, and he could easily break through it. In one breath, he directly rushed more than 60 miles and reached the foot of the mountain. As long as he climbed to the top of the mountain, he would truly reach the end of the Empyrean path. He was really looking forward to what he could obtain at that time. It was just that in all these years, the number of people who could reach the end of the Empyrean path did not exceed 10. To be precise, only 8 people could reach the end of the Empyrean path. The reason why only 8 people could reach the end of the Empyrean path was simple. On the cliff of the mountain, 8 people's names were engraved. They looked very conspicuous. As long as one could pass the Empyrean path, they could leave their names on the cliff. This was a great honor. No one knew why there was an Empyrean path here, nor did they know how the heaven-pilfering divine land was formed. They only needed to know one thing, and that was that climbing the Empyrean path gave them a chance to become an Empyrean. The 8 names engraved on it did not all become Empyreans, but there were indeed some who did. The rest of the time was not enough. After all, climbing up didn't mean that one would immediately become an Empyrean. It was just another kind of enlightenment. I'm finally at the foot of the mountain. As long as I climb up this mountain, I can comprehend the Empyrean laws. Yi Tianyun shook his head. The difficulty wasn't high, but there was one thing that made him pleasantly surprised. The concentration of star power here was quite high, and it provided him with a lot of experience. Unknowingly, he had already gained a lot of experience. However, if he wanted to break through to the 10th refinement Earthlord, he couldn't just rely on experience. He also needed to meet other conditions to truly achieve it. Unless he directly broke through to the Lord of Heaven, then he only needed experience and didn't need to specifically meet other conditions. In theory, this was the first time he had encountered a bottleneck. This bottleneck required other conditions to be met in order to achieve it. Just accumulating experience to level up temporarily wouldn't work, unless he chose to break through to the Lord of Heaven. That would be inferior. What he needed to do was to do his best. The 9th refinement Earth Lord breaking through to the Lord of Heaven would already be quite astonishing for anyone else. But to him, becoming the number 1 earthly monarch throughout the ages was his goal. Fellow disciple, how exactly did you do it? What treasure did you rely on? At this time, a young man on the side looked at Yi Tianyun with disdain. He was sure that Yi Tianyun did not rely on his own abilities, but on external forces. Yi Tianyun frowned. This guy was obviously from the heavenly spring divine realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called him a fellow disciple. Yi Tianyun glanced at him and ignored him. He lifted his feet and walked forward, not saying a word to him. Wait, do you know who I am? The cultivator blocked in front of Yi Tianyun, not letting him go. Why should I know who you are? Yi Tianyun was extremely disgusted with this kind of person. If they couldn't do it, they assumed that others couldn't either. Yo, you're quite arrogant. I'm your senior brother. You should be a little more respectful when you see your senior brother. You don't understand etiquette. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, was extremely dissatisfied. Senior brother? Is there a rule that says that I must be respectful when I see my senior brother and greet him? Yi Tianyun sneered and lifted his leg, wanting to go around him. He couldn't be bothered with him. Don't go. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven said coldly. What treasure did the elder give you? Otherwise, how could you break through the illusion so easily? Take out that treasure and let me have a look. I'm sorry, but don't think that everyone uses some treasure to help them and not rely on their own abilities. Yi Tianyun said coldly. You humans, what other abilities do you have? Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven laughed. How could you come here without relying on a treasure? What a joke. I don't know how you got in here, but you must have had a great encounter, right? Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, what's wrong? A Lord of Heaven walked over and asked. I was teaching a junior brother manners. Who knew that he wouldn't know what's good for him? He's quite arrogant. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, was extremely dissatisfied. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven? How despicable! Yi Tianyun raised his foot and walked forward, directly bypassing Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, ignoring him. Brat, if you have the guts, then try taking another step. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, was about to explode from anger. He was a senior brother, but he couldn't even call out to a junior brother. Yi Tianyun turned a deaf ear to him and continued walking forward. Each step was faster than the one before, and he walked further and further away. Damn it, stop him. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, rushed over and blocked Yi Tianyun's path. He said angrily, I told you to stop, but you dare to disobey me. A good dog doesn't block the way. Yi Tianyun said coldly. You actually called me a dog. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, flew into a rage. Do you believe that I won't throw you out and make you start all over again? Yi Tianyun looked at him coldly and sneered, if you have the guts, then try it. Even if it was an elder, he wouldn't have the slightest bit of respect, let alone a mere senior brother. Whatever the senior brother wanted to do, it had nothing to do with him. You're courting death. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, roared angrily. Without hesitation, he slapped out with his palm. 6 layers of the Lord of Heaven's strength were used, and the sharp wind from his palm was no longer trying to send Yi Tianyun flying. Instead, it directly sent him flying. Scram! Yi Tianyun executed the flying god art, and his figure kicked out at an even faster speed. His foot landed on Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven's face, and he was sent flying out of the celestial sovereign path. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, rolled dozens of times before he managed to stop. At this time, his mouth was already swollen, and he was vomiting blood non-stop. This was because Yi Tianyun was being lenient. If he really wanted to kill someone, his head would have been smashed by Yi Tianyun's kick. Since he was in the heavenly spring divine realm, he should spare his fellow disciple's life. When the crowd saw this, they were all stunned. This fellow disciple killing each other was really exciting. Fortunately, the good guy wasn't in the illusion, or he would definitely have to start all over again. As long as he wasn't interrupted in the illusion, he wouldn't have to start all over again. But now that he was sent flying, no one knew if the other side would be able to take this lying down. You actually kicked Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, away. If the elder hears about this, you will definitely be severely punished. Another fellow disciple beside him scolded him. What a joke. If I didn't retaliate, I would have been sent flying. Don't tell me I didn't suffer any losses. Yi Tianyun retorted coldly. What a joke. Don't think that you have the elder's support just because you have the treasure given to you by the elder. I won't fight you today, but when I get out, I will definitely help Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, seek justice for him. The Lord of Heaven didn't fight Yi Tianyun. Instead, he flew off to find Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven. What an idiot. Senior brother Yu Hua just finished speaking, and he immediately encountered such an idiot from the same sect. How impetuous. Chapter 11-12. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and the others also saw Yi Tianyun's actions. It hadn't been long since the fight started, but he had already sent their fellow disciples flying. His fiery temper made them all suck in a breath of cold air. Junior brother Tianyun, aren't you a bit too ruthless? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven looked a bit worried. Attacking a fellow disciple was a serious matter. Fighting was prohibited here. However, although it wasn't against the rules, it would be troublesome if the elders found out about it. How could the elders not be angry if they didn't cherish such a good opportunity and fought here? Hehe, I just said that these guys were a bit arrogant, but they were immediately taught a lesson. Isn't this a good thing? They are all arrogant and think that others can't do what they can't do. Yu Hua Lord of Heaven immediately laughed. He felt that Yi Tianyun had done a good job. That's right, but won't those elders blame us? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head. He felt that Yi Tianyun was too rash. Blame us? That depends on junior brother Tianyun's level, Yu Hua Lord of Heaven said with a smile. Rules are dead. The one with the bigger fist is the real truth. If junior brother Tianyun gets closer to the end of the heavenly sovereign path, do you think those elders will blame us? Moreover, the cause of this matter is that those guys are too idiotic. They still want to see some treasure. I don't believe that the heavenly sovereign path has any treasure that can suppress that illusion. Even if it does, why didn't they give it to them, but to junior brother Tianyun? Even if you think about it, it's obvious. A bunch of arrogant idiot geniuses. Yuhua Lord of Heaven's words were really vicious. Fortunately, they couldn't hear it. Otherwise, they would definitely come to find trouble with him. Alright, just say these words in your heart. If those people know about it, it won't be good for us. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head. He felt that it was better not to say some words directly. It was obviously not good to affect him like this. Forget it, I can't be bothered to say anything more. Let's continue forward. I hope that junior brother Tianyun will charge forward and ruthlessly make those high and mighty geniuses suffer a loss. Do they think that they are invincible just because they have a slightly better background and a slightly better bloodline? Yu Hua, the Lord of Heaven, sneered. He felt that everything was so ridiculous. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven patted his shoulder, signaling him to calm down. He looked at Gojian Lord of Heaven, his eyes filled with the same coldness. For some people, there was no need to sympathize too much, and there was no need to befriend them. After sending the Lord of Heaven flying with a kick, Yi Tianyun continued to climb upwards. His speed remained the same as before, but for the sake of caution, he reduced his speed from 2 to 3 kilometers to 1 kilometer. Undoubtedly, it would take a little more time to climb to a higher level, but it was safer this way. Everything had to be done safely and not too rash. As expected, if he stopped every kilometer, he would still fall into a more difficult illusion. Originally, he didn't even need a quarter of an hour, but it became several hours, and it even became almost a day. This time was continuously pushed forward. This seemed to be a lot slower, but in reality, it was much faster than other people. Other people didn't even climb to the bottom of the mountain, and they already needed a few days to move forward. That was why Yi Tianyun needed so much time to reach the top of the mountain. It was really incomparable. There were only a few cultivators at the top, and there were at most 10 or so. Compared to the bottom, there were much fewer. In reality, those who could climb to the top were definitely not few. It was just that they weren't here. For example, the flowing cloud Lord of Heaven wasn't here. When they saw Yi Tianyun catch up and see that he was a human, they suspected that he had some kind of special treasure. Otherwise, how could he have broken through the illusion so quickly? Many people had this kind of thought. If it was any other higher level race, no one would have suspected him at all. It was mainly because he was a human, which was why he was so suspected. Yi Tianyun never cares about what they think, as long as he takes care of himself, that's enough. When he was more than 70 kilometers away, another cold voice came. Just now, you kicked Go Jian out of the Lord of Heaven. What do you mean by that? Yi Tianyun looked up. The one who questioned him was an expert from the 8th level of the Lord of Heaven. He looked extraordinarily handsome, and he was also a genius from the heavenly spring god realm. He seemed to have just come out of the illusion not long ago, but he didn't go down to help with what had happened. He just watched coldly from the side. I didn't mean anything. It was just a normal counterattack. Yi Tianyun looked at him and said indifferently, "Is there a problem?" "There's no problem. You can go back now." The flowing cloud Lord of Heaven waved his hand and said coldly, "Why?" Yi Tianyun's face was calm. He didn't show the slightest bit of anger, as if everything had nothing to do with him. "Because I'm your senior brother," the flowing cloud Lord of Heaven said coldly. In the heavenly spring god realm, a senior brother has the right to order his junior brother. Anyone who disobeys will be sentenced to death. Yi Tianyun laughed on the spot. He looked at the flowing cloud Lord of Heaven and sneered. "You're related to that Go Jian Lord of Heaven again. You're just using your position to avenge him, aren't you? As a senior brother, you have the right to order your junior brother. What a joke. I'm not your subordinate, and I'm not related to you. You think you can use your title as a senior brother to oppress others? To be honest, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen. If I had the right to walk to the end of the heavenly sovereign path, who do you think the elder would punish?" Yi Tianyun almost wanted to hit him. This was the so-called power. If he was in danger, he could just forget about this order. But now, it was a matter of his future. If he let him leave, wouldn't that be equivalent to throwing away his future? Do you think you have the right to walk up? The flowing cloud lord of heaven mocked. You relied on a treasure you found somewhere to climb up here. If you really want to go up, do you think you can do it without the ability? My good senior brother, I wonder if your brains have been kicked by a donkey. Do you all think I relied on a treasure to get up here? Even I don't know which eyes of yours saw it. Yi Tianyun didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. Even if it's a treasure I obtained with my own ability. If there's really such a treasure, I'll throw it out for you to pick up. I dare say that you'll be like a dog and immediately rush to pick it up. What do you mean by using your own ability? It's all a bunch of nonsense. If you think you can't complete it, you think others will rely on external forces. What a bunch of idiots. If you look down on us humans, just say it. Don't talk nonsense in front of me. Time is very valuable here, understand? Chapter 11:13. The Zongyun Lord of Heaven was instantly enraged. He looked at Yi Tianyun and said furiously, "Very well, what a sharp tongue. So what if I don't like you? The one with the bigger fist is the hard and fast rule. If I don't teach you a lesson today, I won't know why I'm the senior brother and you are the junior brother." He walked down angrily and wanted to fight with Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. He clenched his fists and prepared for the strongest explosion. Even if it was the powerful Lord of Heaven, he was still confident that he could smash him with one punch. Especially when the other party was careless, it would be very easy to kill him in an instant. Who would have thought that an earthly lord would have the power to surpass most of the Lord of Heaven? Due to carelessness, everything was already over. Oh no, that Zongyun Lord of Heaven is infuriated. When the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven saw this, his face instantly darkened. The difference between Yi Tianyun and the Zongyun Lord of Heaven was so huge. If they really fought, Yi Tianyun would definitely be in danger. It was really unwise to make a move here. The cultivators from the other god territories all revealed gloating gazes. They didn't expect that there would be internal strife here. It was fine if it was an internal strife outside. At least it wouldn't consume the jade pendant. In this place, it could be said that time was money. Every second was equivalent to money. They didn't cultivate properly and were prepared to fight instead. It was really hilarious. They were very happy to see such a situation. Anyway, they weren't the ones who would suffer losses. They could watch the program and cultivate at the side. Why not? These fools. It's really as if they will die if they don't play high and mighty. Yuhua Lord of Heaven shook his head and said in a clear voice, "Senior brother Zongyun, please calm down. It's not a good thing to cause trouble here. Wait until we get out, then we'll plan. How about that?" They couldn't fly over, so they could only shout from below. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, wanted to persuade them to wait until they got out of here before looking for the elders to resolve the issue. This was nothing more than a delaying tactic. It was not to let the Lord of Heaven choose a good place to take revenge. If they really went out, how could the elders fight with them? The Lord of Heaven looked at them coldly, completely ignoring the advice of the Lord of Heaven. "I want to settle it here. What do you think?" He turned his head and looked coldly at Yi Tianyun. He didn't care what the situation was. Even if he was surrounded by enemies, he had to get rid of Yi Tianyun first. He had to protect his own dignity in case someone else chose to rebel against him like Yi Tianyun. Just as the Lord of Heaven was about to make a move, a figure floated past from the side and said indifferently, "Oh, bullying a junior here. Is this the style of the Lord of Heaven, Zongyun? Previously, you were still hooting at me, saying that you wanted to fight with me. Now that I look at it, your magnanimity is really contemptible." A snow-white figure floated down from the sky. The beautiful figure that landed caused Yi Tianyun to stare. The person that appeared in front of him wasn't a stranger. It was the divine Emperor Yu Qin from before. After not seeing her for a short period of time, she had already broken through to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch realm. From the looks of it, she should be preparing to break through to the Lord of Heaven realm. However, in his previous life, he was the divine Emperor Yu Qin. The data of the appraisal eye had been refreshed. He didn't expect that the divine Emperor Yu Qin would appear here. It made him feel very shocked. He originally thought that he wouldn't be able to see her again. Who knew that she would appear in front of him in the blink of an eye? It was truly shocking. Lord of Heaven, flowing clouds, you are here. Zongyun, Lord of Heaven, narrowed his eyes and looked at the divine Emperor Yu Qin. His eyes were filled with a scorching gaze. Lord of Heaven, flowing clouds. Yi Tianyun almost swallowed his tongue. This person was actually the Lord of Heaven, flowing clouds. The crucial point was that she didn't even break through to the Lord of Heaven realm. How could she be called the Lord of Heaven? However, if he were to sense it carefully, it was really similar to the aura of the Lord of Heaven realm. The main reason was that as her cultivation increased, her soul was awakening more and more. Therefore, the aura that she emitted was naturally similar to the Lord of Heaven realm. This way, people would misunderstand her as the Lord of Heaven realm. This wasn't a problem. Yi Tianyun's appraisal eyes could see anything. Naturally, it couldn't be hidden from him. However, she had another identity. It seemed like she had joined another god realm and was able to successfully enter this place. It seemed like this wasn't her first time here. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to fly up so quickly. The divine Emperor Yu Qin slowly landed at a distance of 80 miles away. She was higher than the Lord of Heaven realm. She was the Lord of Heaven realm who was rumored to have the highest chance of reaching the top. Now that she had returned, she attracted the attention of many people. Does the Lord of Heaven realm want to reach the top this time? It's possible. This time, she might be able to reach the top. Even if she can't reach the top, it would be amazing if she could get close to the top. If she could reach the top, she would be the 9th name. I also want to carve my name on it. They all shook their heads and felt extremely envious. It would be great if they had the same ability. Lord of Heaven Liu Yun, become my woman. At this moment, the Lord of Heaven Zong Yun looked at her and said in a deep voice. It was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing everyone to exclaim endlessly. Who would have thought that at this time, the Lord of Heaven would actually speak such words? However, no one was jealous of Liu Yun, the Lord of Heaven, because she was a woman. It was impossible to be jealous of a woman. One day, she could also become another Lord of Heaven's woman, or his own woman. Therefore, there was no need to be jealous of them. All he had to do was conquer them. Now, the Lord of Heaven wanted to conquer her. He wanted to conquer her in front of so many people. This was really overbearing. Yi Tianyun looked at the divine Emperor Yu Qin, trying to figure out something from her expression. However, all he saw was calmness. He was not interested in it at all. Become your woman. The divine Emperor Yu Qin glanced at Yi Tianyun and said indifferently, if you want to become my man, you have to win against him first. As she spoke, she pointed at Yi Tianyun. In an instant, everyone's gazes gathered on him, making him the center of attention. Yi Tianyun was instantly stunned. It seemed that the divine Emperor Yu Qin wanted to use him as a shield so that he could stop these idiots. Win against him? The Lord of Heaven Zong Yun sneered and said, this guy, does he even need to win? That's right, I don't need to win. You have already won. Yi Tianyun looked at the divine Emperor Yu Qin and said, he has already won against me. According to the rules, he can become your man, right? Yi Tianyun's reply made them all dumbfounded. Why did he admit defeat in the blink of an eye? The Lord of Heaven Zong Yun was stunned. Then, he laughed and said, what a good junior brother. You are really flexible. Very good, I am starting to admire you a little. The divine Emperor Yu Qin clenched his fists. His heart was about to explode. He didn't expect that Yi Tianyun would not play according to the rules and actually admit defeat. He had no dignity at all. Chapter 11:14. Don't you have any intention of protecting your own dignity? The divine Emperor Yu Qin gritted her teeth and looked at Yi Tianyun with a bit of resentment. This was a man who had won against her, and yet he admitted defeat so easily. This made her very unhappy. No, I just don't want to be a shield. Yi Tianyun shrugged. This isn't a shield. I just want them to compare. If you can't even win against me, you want to become my Daoist companion? The divine Emperor Yu Qin shook her head. Even if she really did win against Yi Tianyun, she would not become his Daoist companion. How could the cultivators here compare to her ambition? She only said this to give them a standard. If they couldn't even reach this standard, they would be dreaming if they wanted to marry her. If that's the case, you won't be able to marry in this lifetime. Yi Tianyun shrugged. No one can win against me, including you. After saying this, he grinned. His calm voice was filled with boundless arrogance. After listening to Yi Tianyun's explanation, everyone was furious and began to curse Yi Tianyun. Didn't he just have a little bit of skill? How could he be so arrogant? Yi Tianyun's words were undoubtedly saying that he wasn't targeting anyone, but that everyone here was trash. If they really used him as a standard, then the divine Emperor Yu Qin would be single for life. How could such arrogant words not anger everyone? Originally, the Lord of Heaven had changed his opinion of him, but now he was furious. How arrogant! This is the Lord of Heaven Cloud I know. The divine Emperor Yu Qin was not angry at all. He covered his mouth and chuckled. He was very happy. She liked this. Yi Tianyun's previous behavior made her very unhappy. When everyone saw the two of them talking, they immediately knew that the two of them must know each other. Otherwise, they wouldn't talk so intimately and set such a standard. Seeing the two of them flirting with each other, the Lord of Heaven said angrily, "It's fine as long as you beat him. No problem, let's duel now." The Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun rushed in front of Yi Tianyun in a few steps, looked at him coldly and said, let's duel over there." The Lord of Heaven seemed to have gone mad. He wanted to fight with Yi Tianyun and crush him with one punch so that he could win the heart of the beauty. More importantly, he wanted to make up for his humiliation. He didn't expect that the woman he fancied would have such a good relationship with his junior brother. Hold on, do you think I'm talking about this kind of duel? The divine Emperor Yu Qin looked at him and sneered, I'm talking about the celestial venerable Tao, not a martial arts competition. Before I leave, let's see which one of you has a better result. I can stay here for 2 months. Let's see which one of you can beat him in the end. The divine Emperor Yu Qin was definitely not referring to a martial arts competition. With such a huge difference in cultivation levels, there was no meaning to it at all. Moreover, this was the celestial venerable Tao. It was a competition to see who could go further. So it's a competition of the celestial venerable Tao. This is even simpler. The Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun retracted his gaze and turned his gaze to the front again. It was better to use this to determine the outcome. In any case, he was also going to climb up, so let's see who could go further. I'm not interested, but I'm going to climb the celestial venerable Tao anyway. You guys can do whatever you want, but don't drag me down. Yi Tianyun couldn't be bothered with them. Are you planning to back down? The Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun stared at him with burning eyes. Back down? Yi Tianyun sneered and said, I've never backed down. I just want to say that you guys can do whatever you want. If you can surpass me, then come at me. After saying that, Yi Tianyun couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. He raised his foot and walked forward, bypassing the Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun. Brat, I want to see how long the treasure in your hand can last you. Even until his death, he still believed that Yi Tianyun had used a treasure to climb up, not his own strength. This made Yi Tianyun a little angry. This guy was an idiot. It was useless no matter how many times he said it. Then, Yi Tianyun directly climbed up. At the same time, he transmitted his voice. Why are you here? You even changed your identity and joined another divine realm. You know how to find resources to cultivate, but don't I know? The divine Emperor Yu Qin transmitted his voice. The celestial venerable Tao is a good place. In my previous life, I almost reached the top, and now I'm challenging it again. If I can reach the top, my success rate of breaking through to the celestial venerable Tao will greatly increase. Is the celestial venerable Tao that amazing? Yi Tianyun asked in confusion. Of course. Don't think that only the 5 divine realms control this place. In fact, there are often 3rd-grade divine realms coming here to ask for a spot. 2nd-grade divine realms can't stop them, so they can only obediently give up. The divine Emperor Yu Qin said indifferently, legend has it that this stolen heaven holy land is a treasure that was lost by an invincible expert. 3rd-grade divine realms have been coveting it, but they can't take it away. They can only send people here. Even 3rd-grade divine realms can't take it away. Yi Tianyun was shocked. It seemed that this stolen heaven holy land was not simple. Third-grade divine realms are not invincible, unless stronger existences come. However, stronger existences probably won't care about this stolen heaven holy land. They have more amazing treasures. The divine emperor Yu Qin laughed at himself. He felt that everything was so insignificant. Yi Tianyun nodded. He knew that there was always someone stronger. To them, this was a land of treasure, but to some peerless experts, it could only be trash. Climb to the peak of the celestial realm. Yi Tianyun felt that he had gained some motivation. He wanted to see what the truth was. Then, he continued to accelerate forward until he reached the place where Heaven Monarch Zongyun was at. The Lord of Heaven also increased his speed, but he didn't dare to rush too far. He would only walk a few hundred meters each time before stopping to break the illusion. Yi Tianyun was very violent. He still sprinted 1 mile each time. He was much faster than the Lord of Heaven. Similarly, the divine emperor Yu Qin wasn't slow either. Like Yi Tianyun, he also sprinted 1 mile. She almost reached the end in her previous life. Now, with the support of her soul from her previous life, her speed was naturally not slower than Yi Tianyun. In fact, she was even faster. Looking at this chase, the people behind could only watch from afar. They couldn't catch up at all. Only the geniuses in front could participate in this chase. However, some cultivators weren't interested. They all took it slow. Some participated in this chase. They didn't confess like the Lord of Heaven, but they wanted to win against Yi Tianyun before confessing. Doing things first and then expressing them later was undoubtedly the best choice. It was more low-key and reliable. Yi Tianyun didn't care about them. He used himself as the standard and continued to rush forward. He fell into the illusion again and again. He felt that he had passed through one world after another, becoming different existences and comprehending the various forms of life. Chapter 11:15. When Yi Tianyun walked this Empyrean Tao, it was not simply clearing it and be done with it, but carefully comprehending the emotions within. Since this kind of test was given, there must be its own reason. Otherwise, why would it appear here? The path to becoming an Empyrean was very bumpy and difficult. To succeed, the price needed to pay was extremely high. There were many ways to break through to Empyrean. As for which method to choose to break through, that depended on the individual. The Empyrean Tao here, Yi Tianyun believed that it was definitely an Empyrean who carved his breakthrough method here, so that future generations could carefully comprehend it. This Empyrean powerhouse was considered an extremely conscientious existence. It was just that what the true meaning was, that was not very clear. I reckon that after climbing this Empyrean Tao, I'll be able to know the thoughts of this Empyrean powerhouse. Yi Tianyun smiled and continued to climb forward rapidly, maintaining the same speed all along. He started catching up to the others bit by bit and was even very close to catching up to Zongyun Lord of Heaven. Zongyun Lord of Heaven was extremely anxious in his heart. If this carried on, he would definitely be caught up by Yi Tianyun. At that time, he would lose face to the extreme. Previously, he was still hooting at Yi Tianyun, saying that he could easily shake him off. Who knew that now, he was pulled closer and closer, starting to be caught up. This kid is so strange. Just what kind of treasure is it, to be able to clear it so quickly? Could it be that he really relied on his own ability to come up? Impossible. It's impossible for the human race to be that powerful. The human race has always been relatively low level. Talent is so low, how can he possibly rely on himself to come up? Zongyun Lord of Heaven would never believe that Yi Tianyun could have this ability. The human race had always been so low level, how could he possibly turn things around? It was impossible for a salted fish to turn around, it would only get smellier the more it turned. Amidst his disbelief, Yi Tianyun was already gradually closing in on him, rapidly closing from the originally not short distance. In the end, when the distance between the two people was less than 100 meters, Zongyun Lord of Heaven was utterly flustered. Just how long had it been and Yi Tianyun already caught up? This speed was very astonishing. Just what kind of treasure did you use? This is clearly cheating. Zongyun Lord of Heaven shouted. Cheating? Yi Tianyun's tone was filled with disdain. Only this guy could think of such a thing. That's right, you cheated. Otherwise, how could it be so fast? You're cheating. In order to cover up his own shortcomings, the Lord of Heaven could only retort like this. What a joke. Even if he's using treasures, that's his own ability. If you have a treasure, it's also your ability. You feel like you've lost, so you're looking for excuses? I look down on this kind of man the most. He's a sore loser. The key is that it's not the end yet. It's meaningless to admit defeat now. The Divine Emperor Yu Qin shook his head at the front. He felt that Zhong Yun, the Lord of Heaven, was really funny. He looked at him with more and more disdain. Even if they had a good impression of him before, it would all disappear. Needless to say, he didn't have a good impression of him in the first place, and now he hated him even more. Is there such a thing as cheating these days? As long as it was on him, no matter how he used it, it wouldn't be considered cheating. There's never too much deception in war. What fairness! If he really had this treasure, he would have used it without saying anything. It was simply disgusting. The Lord of Heaven's face turned green and white. He didn't expect to be ridiculed by the woman he was pursuing. It made him feel like he had eaten a fly. I'm just saying. It's still unknown who will win. The Lord of Heaven clenched his teeth and started to rush forward crazily. He was much further away than before. Yi Tianyun took a glance at the back and shook his head. This idiot was purely seeking death. They were sprinting within their own estimation and not acting recklessly. The Lord of Heaven was acting recklessly. He was completely enraged by the Divine Emperor Yu Qin. Actually, you don't have to speak up for me, Yi Tianyun said to the Divine Emperor Yu Qin. I'm not speaking up for you. I just feel that he's disgusting. He has already cultivated to the level of the Lord of Heaven, yet he still says such childish words. Even I can't stand it anymore. The Divine Emperor Yu Qin was speaking the truth. She was very unhappy with the Lord of Heaven. There was no other reason. All right. Yi Tianyun shrugged his shoulders. It seemed that the Lord of Heaven wasn't qualified to be his opponent. The only person who could be his opponent was the Divine Emperor Yu Qin. Of course, there weren't any opponents here. Anyway, reaching the top depended on one's own ability. There was no limit to the number of spots, and there was no such thing as first place. Immediately after, Yi Tianyun continued to rush forward. Although the other cultivators didn't say anything, they still rushed forward silently. However, no matter how fast they rushed, they couldn't be as fast as Yi Tianyun. Not only did they fail to catch up to Yi Tianyun, but they were also left behind by him. I can't see through you anymore. You don't seem to be a reincarnation. How can you break through the illusion so quickly? This was what the Divine Emperor Yu Qin was most puzzled about. Forget it. After all, she had the soul of a previous life. What did Yi Tianyun have? The soul of a previous life. She couldn't sense it. As for what treasure he used, she couldn't tell either. I don't know. I broke through the illusion so easily. Yi Tianyun shrugged his shoulders. His walking speed started to slow down. He started to feel that the illusion here was a little strenuous. He had to slow down. Broke through it so easily? The Divine Emperor Yu Qin rolled her eyes. She knew that Yi Tianyun wouldn't tell the truth. Of course, Yi Tianyun wasn't telling the truth. The reason why he could break through the illusion so quickly was naturally because he had the support of various titles. In addition, he had his own abilities and his own experiences. All of these combined together allowed him to break through the illusion so quickly. As for what treasures he used, he didn't have any. He completely relied on his own strength to rush up. After which, they didn't talk much. Yi Tianyun continued to climb. There wasn't much time left. The further he went, the more time he needed. He was even more than the Divine Emperor Yu Qin. The gap between the two of them was starting to show. The Divine Emperor Yu Qin had lived many more years than Yi Tianyun. He had even lived an extra life. In addition, he had passed through this place once and almost reached the peak. He would definitely be more stable and faster than Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun didn't compete with her. After all, he didn't intend to compete with her. This wasn't a battle to ascend to the heavens. So what if she was faster than him? He wouldn't get any rewards anyway. Following the two of them, they advanced triumphantly and left the others far behind. Even the third person was miles ahead of them. They weren't on the same level. As time passed, the gap between them would only get bigger and bigger. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and the others looked at the two of them in a daze. Junior brother Tianyun is amazing. He isn't inferior to the flowing cloud Lord of Heaven. Chapter 11:16. No one knew if the Lord of Heaven would be able to wake up from the illusion quickly. He would be done for if he exceeded the time limit. Yi Tianyun would be too lazy to save him. As for whether the others would help, he did not know. In any case, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and the others could not help. Even if they wanted to help, they would have to get closer. They were so far away that it was impossible for them to save him. Yi Tianyun could not be bothered with these things. He kept walking forward, and the distance between them gradually shortened. He looked up and saw that there were still 3 miles in front of him. He would successfully reach the top of the Celestial Lord path. This was not too difficult for him. It was the same for the Divine Emperor Yu Qin. The two of them were only a few hundred meters apart. This is where I'm stuck. The test is too difficult. It's completely different from the previous ones. Of course, everyone's situation is different. I hope you can pass this hurdle. The Divine Emperor Yu Qin took a step forward and stepped into a special area. His surroundings were shrouded in a special light. At this time, Yi Tianyun was surprised to find that the area he entered was an absolutely safe area. The jade pendant on his body was no longer being consumed. It was as if he had entered a safe place. There's such a situation. Yi Tianyun thought for a while and rushed forward. He thought he could rush past the place where the Divine Emperor Yu Qin was. When he stood side by side, his entire consciousness was instantly sucked in. He didn't even have the slightest ability to resist before he was sucked in. It was completely different from before. If he had forced himself to hold on, he could have walked a longer distance. Now, he could not. It was as if he was stuck at this point. When he stepped on it, he was immediately sucked in and forced into the illusion. The people below were shocked when they saw this. They did not expect that the jade pendant would not be consumed when he walked up. This meant that he could stay there forever without worrying about the consumption of the jade pendant. This made them very envious. As long as he did not consume the jade pendant, he could stay there and cultivate. It did not matter even if he was stuck. As long as he could stay there, his body would absorb the astral power on its own and slowly become stronger. However, the key was that they were so close to the finish line. For them, every step was so difficult. How could it be so easy for them? He easily reached the end of the heavenly sovereign path. If he continued walking for a few more miles, he would reach it. Reaching the end, one would be able to comprehend something left behind by an Empyrean. Just thinking about it made one envious. They were all wondering why they didn't climb to the other side themselves. Little did they know how much energy Yi Tianyun needed to climb to that place. He had experienced too many illusions. Although it seemed like he had broken them very quickly, in reality, he had been in the illusions for over 1,000 years. It could be said to be 1,000 years in one glance. At the same time, Yi Tianyun felt that he had entered a strange space. What is this space? Yi Tianyun looked around and realized that he had actually arrived at a withered forest. The surrounding plants had all withered, and many spiritual herbs had also withered. This made Yi Tianyun's heart ache. These elixirs were quite precious. Although it was just an illusion, why did it feel so real? He felt like he had truly entered a real space. It was not like before, where he had turned into a farmer or a soldier to participate in some things. He had truly been sucked into a strange space. The difference was that his soul had entered, not his body. Could this be an independent space of the heavenly pilfering sacred land? Yi Tianyun guessed. In any case, this was definitely not an ordinary illusion. It was very different from the previous trials. After walking for a while, Yi Tianyun wanted to fly up and observe his surroundings. However, he discovered that he couldn't fly at all. His flight was completely sealed, which surprised him. He immediately understood. It was normal for such a phenomenon to occur. After all, this was a different space, so it was normal for there to be restrictions. However, this way, he wouldn't be able to see the entire area. As he was thinking about how to leave this place, he suddenly heard a deep voice. It has been a long time since a suitable person has come here. I don't know how many years it has been. The voice was deep and hoarse, as if it was a 100-year-old man speaking. While he was puzzled, the withered plants in front of him suddenly regained their vitality and restored their original appearance. However, the restored area was only a small part. It was just a path that led him forward, as if it was guiding him forward. Yi Tianyun didn't doubt it. Even if he was careful, it was useless. This space belonged to this person. According to this situation, as long as the other party didn't let him go, it would be difficult for him to leave this place. Since it was difficult to escape, he might as well go and see what was going on. He followed this restored path. As soon as his feet stepped on the grass, Yi Tianyun immediately felt a comfortable life force surging, making him feel comfortable all over. Compared to before, the difference was like heaven and earth. This gave him a feeling that this was a real space. It was just that his soul had been moved here. As he went deeper, there were more and more spirit herbs in front of him. The life force also became denser and denser. It was no longer that strange energy. Finally, after walking for a while, he saw an old man sitting at a table in front of him, pouring tea and drinking by himself. The table and chair he was sitting on were all grown from tree vines. It just happened to be a table and chair. After Yi Tianyun walked in, the old man turned his head, looked at him and said, "I didn't expect that the suitable person this time would be so young." The old man looked at him. Yi Tianyun also looked at the old man. Rather than saying that the person in front of him was an old man, it would be better to say that he had white hair and a ruddy complexion. Other than his white hair, his complexion was no different from a young man. This really surprised him. What surprised him was not the appearance, but the strange energy that this person emitted, forming a strange aura around him. Artifact spirit? Yi Tianyun looked at him up and down. To be able to discover his situation, it was definitely not simple. However, the old man in front of him didn't feel like a person. Instead, he felt like a mass of energy. In a top-grade treasure, there must be an artifact spirit. In other words, it was a soul derived from the treasure. To obtain this treasure, one must tame this artifact spirit. Only then would one be able to possess it. If one didn't have enough strength, forcefully subduing it would instead cause a backlash. This was the same as the artifact spirits in the three realms. His current reincarnation grade weapon, on the other hand, didn't have an artifact spirit. Artifact spirits were nurtured. It wasn't something that could casually appear just because the grade was high. That would be too common. Truly powerful treasures had artifact spirit.